Tonight, we are diving into 28 deep lore facts from the wizarding world of Harry Potter. There is a lot to explore, but I will keep the pacing gentle so you can settle in, relax, and perhaps drift off to sleep as we journey through one of the most fascinating fictional worlds ever created. Thank you to everyone who has been joining us consistently. If you are returning tonight, let me know in the comments how many nights in a row you have been here. And if this is your very first night, simply comment, Night 1. Now, let us begin. The battle was over. Not paused. Not delayed. Not waiting to begin again. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, the shadow that had hung over the wizarding world had finally disappeared. The Great Hall stood silent beneath a broken ceiling. Torn banners hung from shattered stone walls. Long wooden tables lay splintered across the floor, buried beneath dust, ash, and fragments of the battle that had changed everything. Only hours earlier, the castle had trembled beneath curses powerful enough to destroy entire towers. Screams had echoed through corridors, giants had smashed through defenses, friends had fallen beside friends. Now there was only silence. A strange silence, the kind that arrives after a storm so violent that your ears almost refuse to believe it has ended. As dawn slowly approached the horizon, pale sunlight began creeping through broken windows high above the hall. Golden rays touched the stone floor, touched the fallen, touched the survivors. And for a brief moment, nobody moved. Nobody knew how. For years, every decision had been guided by one goal. Survive, fight, hide, run, prepare, resist. Everything had pointed toward a final confrontation that many believed would never truly come. Yet somehow it had, and somehow they had won. Harry Potter stood near the center of the hall, surrounded by the remains of the battle. His wand still rested in his hand. His grip remained tight despite the fighting being finished. Not because he expected another attack, because his body had forgotten how to let go. The exhaustion was deeper than physical fatigue. It reached somewhere beyond muscles and bones. For years, he'd carried a burden nobody else fully understood, a prophecy, a connection, a destiny forced upon him before he could even speak. Every moment of his life had pointed toward one impossible conclusion. Now that conclusion had arrived, and suddenly there was nothing left. No visions, no mental connection, no dark presence lurking somewhere in the back of his thoughts. The emptiness felt almost unnatural. For the first time since childhood, his mind belonged entirely to him. You might imagine victory feels explosive, like fireworks, like celebrations, like endless joy. But real victory often feels different. Sometimes victory feels quiet. Sometimes it feels confusing. Sometimes it feels like standing in the middle of a ruined castle, wondering what comes next. That was where Harry found himself now. The future had finally arrived, and he had absolutely no idea what to do with it. Around him, survivors slowly began gathering. Some searched desperately for loved ones. Others sat in silence beside the fallen. Many simply stared, trying to process what had happened, trying to understand how they were still alive. Near one corner of the hall, members of the Weasley family gathered together. Their victory carried a wound that would never fully heal. Fred Weasley was gone. The laughter that had filled every room. The twin who seemed incapable of taking life seriously. The inventor. The prankster. The brother. The son. The friend. Gone. George remained nearby, surrounded by family, yet somehow isolated within his grief. No words existed for a loss like that. Some wounds arrived too suddenly for language. Elsewhere, Remus Lupin and Nymphadora Tonks lay among the fallen. 2 lives extinguished only months after welcoming a son into the world. A child who would now grow up hearing stories about parents he would barely remember. Everywhere Harry looked, he saw sacrifice. Everywhere he looked, he saw reminders that victory had demanded a terrible price. The war was over. But grief had only begun. As morning spread across Hogwarts, the castle itself seemed transformed. The ancient fortress had survived countless wars throughout history. Yet, few battles had left scars this deep. Sections of wall had collapsed. Windows had been reduced to jagged frames. Entire corridors lay buried beneath rubble. The school that had served as Harry's home for 7 years looked wounded, almost alive in its suffering. And perhaps that was fitting, because everyone inside its walls felt wounded too. Some physically, others emotionally, most both. Yet even amid the destruction, signs of hope began appearing. Students helped clear debris. Teachers comforted survivors. Healers moved through the castle treating injuries. Small acts, simple acts, but important ones. Because rebuilding always begins with something small. One stone, one conversation, one decision to keep moving forward. Nobody understood that better than Hermione Granger. While others focused on the immediate aftermath, her mind had already begun looking ahead. The war had exposed deep problems within wizarding society. Corruption, discrimination, fear, hatred. The defeat of a single dark wizard would not magically erase those problems. The system itself needed repair. Perhaps even complete reconstruction. That realization would eventually shape the rest of her life. But for now, even Hermione allowed herself a moment of silence. A moment to breathe. A moment to remember those who had not lived to see the sunrise. Outside the castle, the Forbidden Forest stood motionless beneath the early morning sky. Only hours earlier, it had served as the stage for one of the most important moments in magical history. Now birds slowly returned to the trees. Wind drifted through branches. Nature moved forward, as nature always does. Indifferent to wars, indifferent to legends, indifferent to prophecies. The world kept turning, and that simple truth felt almost comforting. For years, everything had revolved around Voldemort. Now the world was reminding everyone that life continued. The future would arrive whether they felt ready or not. As sunlight strengthened across the grounds, conversations slowly returned. Quiet at first, then gradually louder. Plans began forming. Funerals would need to be arranged. The ministry would need new leadership. Families would need support. Schools would need rebuilding. Thousands of decisions waited beyond the horizon. But none of those responsibilities could erase the significance of this morning. Because this was not merely the first day after a battle. It was the first day after fear. An entire generation had grown up beneath Voldemort's shadow. Many barely remembered a world without conflict. For them, peace felt unfamiliar, almost strange. Yet it was real. The dark mark no longer ruled the sky. Death Eaters no longer controlled the government. Children would no longer grow up expecting war. The future remained uncertain. But uncertainty was infinitely better than terror. Harry stepped toward one of the shattered windows overlooking the grounds. The rising sun painted the landscape gold. Smoke still drifted from damaged sections of the castle. Yet beyond the destruction he saw something remarkable. Life. Students helping one another. Professors organizing recovery efforts. Families embracing. Friends reunited. The world had not ended. Against every prediction. Against every fear. Against every impossible obstacle. The world had survived. For a long time, Harry simply stood there watching. Listening to distant voices. Feeling the warmth of sunlight against his face. And perhaps for the first time since he was 11 years old, he allowed himself to imagine a future that did not involve fighting. A future that belonged to him. A future built not around survival, but around living. That future would not be easy. The years ahead would bring political upheaval, painful healing, difficult choices, and challenges nobody could yet imagine. The reconstruction of the wizarding world had only just begun. But all of it started here, on a quiet morning. Inside a broken castle, with survivors staring toward a new horizon. The war had ended. The rebuilding was about to begin, and the story of what happened next would shape the wizarding world forever. For most people, victory is imagined as a finish line. A moment when every burden disappears. A moment when fear dissolves and happiness immediately takes its place. But reality is rarely that simple, especially for those who survive wars. The days following the Battle of Hogwarts did not feel like a celebration. They felt like exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that settles deep inside the soul. The castle remained filled with survivors moving through the wreckage like ghosts. Every corridor carried memories. Every classroom reminded someone of a friend who would never return. Even the air felt different, heavier, quieter, as though Hogwarts itself was mourning. Harry Potter spent much of those first days wandering the castle alone. Not because he wanted solitude, because he did not know where he belonged anymore. For 7 years, his identity had been tied to one purpose: defeat Voldemort. Everything else had been secondary: school, friendships, dreams, normal life. All of it existed behind the larger mission. Now that mission was complete, and without it, Harry felt strangely lost. Sometimes he found himself standing in corridors with no memory of why he had walked there. Sometimes he would stare out castle windows for hours, watching workers clear rubble from the grounds, watching owls arrive carrying messages from every corner of Britain, watching life move forward while he remained frozen in place. It was not sadness exactly. It was not happiness either. It was something far more complicated. The realization that the thing which had defined your entire existence was suddenly gone. Around him, the wizarding world was already changing. News of Voldemort's defeat spread rapidly. Within days, celebrations erupted across magical Britain. Diagon Alley filled with cheering crowds. Families reunited after months of hiding. Witches and wizards who had lived in fear finally stepped into the open. For many, it felt like liberation. For Harry, it felt distant, almost unreal. The celebrations belonged to everyone else. He could hear them, read about them, even appreciate them, but he could not fully participate, not yet. The wounds were still too fresh, the memories still too vivid. Every victory carried a face attached to it. Fred Weasley, Remus Lupin, Nymphadora Tonks, Colin Creevey, Lavender Brown, and dozens more. Names that would never appear in history books with the same prominence as Harry Potter's, yet names that mattered just as much. Perhaps more, because they had paid the ultimate price. At night, sleep became difficult. Whenever Harry closed his eyes, fragments of the battle returned. The Great Hall, the Forbidden Forest, the final duel. Voldemort's face, the green flashes of deadly curses, the screams, the silence that followed. Again and again, like echoes trapped inside his mind. The strange thing was that fear no longer accompanied those memories. Fear had vanished with Voldemort. What remained was weight, the weight of remembering, the weight of surviving when so many others had not. Meanwhile, Hogwarts transformed into something entirely different. The castle no longer resembled a school. It resembled a recovery center. Healers moved through damaged corridors treating injuries, builders repaired shattered walls. Volunteers organized supplies, professors worked tirelessly to restore order. Professor McGonagall barely slept. The burden of rebuilding Hogwarts had fallen largely onto her shoulders. Students watched her move through the castle from dawn until late evening, organizing repairs, meeting officials, comforting grieving families, planning the future. She carried herself with the same determination that had defined her during the battle. Yet even she seemed older somehow. The war had left its mark on everyone. No exceptions. Outside the castle, another battle was beginning. Not one fought with wands, one fought with decisions. The Ministry of Magic stood dangerously unstable. Years of corruption had weakened its foundations. Under Voldemort's influence, trust in government had nearly collapsed. Entire departments required investigation. Laws required revision. Officials required replacement. Someone needed to take control. Someone respected by both the Ministry and the Resistance. Someone capable of leading a wounded society through recovery. That person was Kingsley Shacklebolt. Few appointments in wizarding history received such immediate support. Kingsley had earned trust through action. Throughout the war, he had remained consistent, calm, reliable, honorable, qualities that suddenly became priceless. While politicians argued and bureaucrats hesitated, Kingsley moved. Emergency meetings were organized. Investigations began. Security was restored. The process of rebuilding government started almost immediately. For the first time in years, the ministry belonged to the people again, not to fear, not to propaganda, not to a dark wizard hiding behind political institutions. To the people. The symbolism mattered enormously, because rebuilding trust would prove just as difficult as rebuilding buildings. Back at Hogwarts, Hermione Granger had already recognized this challenge. While others focused on physical damage, she focused on systemic damage. The war had revealed uncomfortable truths. Prejudice remained deeply rooted within magical society. Discrimination had flourished under the right conditions. Too many people had stayed silent. Too many institutions had failed. Defeating Voldemort removed the symptom, not the disease. Hermione understood that better than almost anyone. Long before becoming a war hero, she had been a student who questioned unfair systems. Now those same instincts returned stronger than ever. She spent hours discussing reform with professors and ministry officials, not because she enjoyed politics, because she understood its importance. The future depended on it. Ron Weasley approached recovery differently. Unlike Harry and Hermione, Ron sought comfort through family. The burrow became a sanctuary, a place where healing could begin. Yet even there, grief lingered. Fred's absence was impossible to ignore. Every room carried reminders. Every joke carried echoes. Every family gathering felt incomplete. George struggled the most. The loss of a twin defied ordinary understanding. Fred had never simply been a brother. He had been part of George's identity, a constant presence since birth. Now half of that lifelong partnership was gone. No training prepares someone for that. No spell repairs that wound. Family did what they could. They stayed close, shared meals, shared stories, shared memories. Small acts of love became essential. Because sometimes healing does not happen through grand gestures. Sometimes it happens through ordinary moments repeated over time. As the weeks passed, Hogwarts gradually emptied. Students returned home. Families reclaimed loved ones. Funerals were held across the country, one by one. Each service serving as a painful reminder of what victory had cost. Crowds gathered. Candles burned. Stories were shared. Tears flowed freely. The wizarding world mourned together. And in doing so, began healing together. Harry attended many of those funerals, often quietly, without speeches, without attention. He understood something that others sometimes forgot. The war had never been about him alone. It had belonged to everyone. Everyone had sacrificed something. Everyone deserved recognition. Yet amid the grief, signs of hope continued appearing. Children played again. Businesses reopened. Families planned futures instead of escape routes. People laughed. Not constantly. Not without guilt. But they laughed. And that mattered, because laughter is one of the first signs that healing has begun. The future remained uncertain. Many challenges still waited ahead. Political reform, economic recovery, social reconstruction, justice for war criminals, support for survivors. All of it remained unfinished. But for the first time in a very long time, those challenges belonged to a free society, not a frightened one. And that changed everything. Because peace is not merely the absence of war, peace is the opportunity to build something better. The wizarding world now possessed that opportunity. The question was whether it could seize it. For Harry Potter, the answer to that question would soon arrive in an unexpected form. A decision involving an ancient wand, a decision that would reveal what kind of man he intended to become after the war, a decision that would quietly shape the future of magical Britain. And it would begin with a walk toward the headmaster's office. In the days following the Battle of Hogwarts, while the wizarding world celebrated its freedom and mourned its dead, Harry Potter found himself drawn toward a place he had visited countless times before, the headmaster's office. The castle remained busy around him. Builders repaired damaged towers, professors coordinated reconstruction efforts. Students prepared to leave for home. Yet Harry barely noticed any of it. His thoughts remained fixed on a single object resting inside his pocket, the Elder Wand, the most powerful wand ever created. The wand that had shaped centuries of wizarding history. The wand that had left a trail of betrayal, obsession, murder, and ambition, stretching back hundreds of years. Now it belonged to him, at least according to the ancient rules that governed wand allegiance. Harry had never wanted it. That was perhaps what made him different from nearly everyone who had possessed it before. Others had hunted the Elder Wand, killed for it, lied for it, sacrificed everything to obtain it. Harry wanted nothing more than to be rid of it. As he climbed the winding staircase leading toward the headmaster's office, memories flooded his mind. Dumbledore, Snape, the astronomy tower, the cave, the Horcrux hunt. Everything seemed connected to this moment. The war was over. Yet one final decision remained. One final chapter needed closing. The gargoyle guarding the office stepped aside without resistance. Perhaps it recognized the young man approaching. Perhaps Hogwarts itself understood why he had come. The circular office felt strangely unchanged. Silver instruments continued spinning quietly upon their tables. Bookshelves remained crowded with centuries of magical knowledge. Sunlight drifted through tall windows, and surrounding the room were the portraits of former headmasters and headmistresses. Watching, waiting, observing. Many of them appeared asleep. Others peeked curiously from their frames. But one portrait immediately captured Harry's attention. Albus Dumbledore. The old wizard sat calmly within his painted frame, his familiar half-moon spectacles resting upon his nose. His expression carried the same mixture of wisdom and sadness Harry remembered from life. For several moments neither spoke. Harry simply stood there, looking at the man who had shaped so much of his journey. Finally, Dumbledore smiled gently. "You have come to discuss the wand." It was not a question. Harry nodded. Slowly, he removed the Elder Wand from his pocket. Even now, it felt different from any wand he had ever held. Lighter, older, almost alive. The wood seemed to carry the weight of history itself. For centuries, witches and wizards had believed ultimate power rested within its core. Many had devoted entire lives to obtaining it. Most had met terrible ends. Harry looked down at the wand, then back toward Dumbledore. "I do not want it." The words felt simple, yet they carried enormous significance. Because throughout history, countless wizards had failed to say those same words. Dumbledore studied him carefully, perhaps searching for hesitation, perhaps searching for temptation. But Harry felt none, only certainty. The old headmaster nodded slowly, and then they spoke. Not as teacher and student, not as mentor and chosen one, but as two people discussing the dangerous nature of power. Dumbledore explained again what Harry already understood. The Elder Wand did not create greatness. It attracted those who desired greatness. That was the real danger. The wand's history was not written in magic, it was written in human weakness. Greed, pride, fear, ambition. Every generation produced someone convinced they could control its power. Every generation proved otherwise. Harry listened quietly, his fingers tightened slightly around the wand. Outside the office, a new era was beginning. Inside, an old era prepared to end. The irony was not lost on him. After everything he had survived, after defeating the most feared dark wizard in modern history, the greatest challenge was not defeating an enemy, it was resisting temptation. The temptation to keep power, the temptation to believe he deserved it. The temptation to think he could use it wisely. That temptation had destroyed countless lives before him. Harry had seen enough destruction, enough death, enough suffering. He had no desire to become another name in the Elder Wand's bloody history. Eventually, the conversation shifted towards something else. His own wand, the holy wand that had accompanied him through nearly every important moment of his life. Broken during the final stages of the war, damaged beyond ordinary magical repair. Harry removed it carefully. Looking at it stirred memories stretching back to Ollivanders, his first visit to Diagon Alley, his first glimpse into the wizarding world, his first sense of belonging. This wand had never been the most powerful, never the most famous, but it was his. And somehow that mattered more. With the Elder Wand resting lightly in his hand, Harry performed a simple repair. No dramatic explosion followed, no burst of ancient power, Just a quiet act of restoration. The broken pieces rejoined. The wood healed. The wand became whole once again. Harry felt immediate relief, as though something important had returned home. The Elder Wand had accomplished one final task. Nothing more, nothing less. For Harry, that was enough. The decision formed completely in his mind. He knew exactly what needed to happen next. Several days later, beneath a calm sky and surrounded by the peaceful grounds of Hogwarts, Harry walked toward the white marble tomb overlooking the lake. Dumbledore's resting place. The giant tomb stood quietly against the landscape, simple, elegant, timeless. A monument not to power, but to wisdom. Harry approached alone. No crowd accompanied him. No reporters documented the moment. No ceremony had been organized. This decision belonged to him, and perhaps to Dumbledore. Nothing more. The Elder Wand rested in his hand one final time. Sunlight reflected softly from its polished surface. Harry looked at it carefully. He thought about Antioch Peveril, Grindelwald, Dumbledore, Voldemort. All the lives connected through this single piece of wood. All the violence, all the obsession, all the tragedy. And then he thought about the future. The future he hoped would be different. The future he hoped would no longer worship power above all else. Slowly, he placed the Elder Wand inside the tomb. Beside its previous master. Beside the only wizard powerful enough to possess it without becoming consumed by it. For a moment, he simply stood there, looking down, listening to the breeze moving across the lake, feeling the weight lift from his shoulders. No spell marked the occasion. No magical explosion shook the castle. The moment remained small, quiet, personal, yet its significance could hardly be overstated. The cycle had ended. For centuries, the Elder Wand had passed from conqueror to conqueror, its ownership transferred through conflict, through violence, through ambition. Now, for the first time, someone had chosen a different path. Someone had simply walked away. Harry turned from the tomb and began making his way back toward the castle. The burden felt lighter, not because his responsibilities had disappeared. Far from it, new challenges waited ahead. The reconstruction of society, the pursuit of justice, the healing of an entire generation. But one chapter of history had finally closed. As Hogwarts slowly repaired its walls and the wizarding world rebuilt its future, Harry Potter had made a choice that revealed who he truly was. Not a conqueror, not a ruler, not a seeker of ultimate power. Just a young man who understood something many powerful people never learn. The greatest strength is often found in knowing when to let go. And while Harry laid an ancient legend to rest, another man was preparing to rebuild an entire nation. His name was Kingsley Shacklebolt, and the reforms he would unleash upon the Ministry of Magic would change the wizarding world forever. While Harry Potter quietly ended the legacy of the Elder Wand beside Dumbledore's tomb, another battle was unfolding far beyond the walls of Hogwarts. This battle would not be fought with curses. It would not be decided by prophecy. And it would not be won in a single night. The war had left the Ministry of Magic in ruins. Not physically, politically, morally, institutionally. For years, the ministry had been infiltrated from within. Some officials had been manipulated. Others had been intimidated. Many had simply chosen the path of least resistance. By the time Voldemort seized effective control, the ministry had already become a hollow shell of what it was meant to be. Trust had vanished. Justice had been corrupted. Fear had become policy. And now someone had to rebuild everything from the ground up. That responsibility fell upon Kingsley Shacklebolt. Unlike many politicians, Kingsley had never sought power. He had earned respect through service. Throughout the Second Wizarding War, he remained one of the few figures trusted by nearly everyone. Members of the Order respected him. Ministry employees respected him. Ordinary witches and wizards respected him. Even those who disagreed with him rarely questioned his integrity. In the uncertain days following Voldemort's defeat, that trust became invaluable. The ministry needed stability. Kingsley provided it. Within days of the battle, he was appointed interim minister for magic. The decision was welcomed across Britain. For the first time in years, People felt as though a competent leader stood at the helm. Yet Kingsley understood something many celebrated citizens did not. Defeating Voldemort had been difficult. Rebuilding society would be harder because dark wizards can be defeated. Broken institutions are much more complicated. The first challenge appeared immediately. The ministry remained filled with individuals who had supported Voldemort's regime. Some had done so willingly. Others claimed they had acted under pressure. Many attempted to blur the distinction. Determining the truth would take months, perhaps years. Investigators moved through department after department. Offices were searched. Records were examined. Testimonies were collected. The process revealed shocking levels of corruption. Entire sections of government had participated in discriminatory policies. Officials who once appeared respectable had helped enforce persecution. Some had signed orders that destroyed innocent lives. Others had looked away while those crimes occurred. The ministry had not merely failed. In many cases, it had actively contributed to the problem. Kingsley refused to ignore that reality. Too many governments rebuild by pretending nothing happened. Kingsley chose a different path. Accountability. Painful accountability. The process was uncomfortable. It was controversial, but it was necessary, because without accountability, trust could never return. One of the first institutions targeted for dismantling was the Muggle-born Registration Commission. During Voldemort's rule, the commission had become a tool of persecution. Thousands of innocent witches and wizards had been investigated, questioned, humiliated, branded as threats simply because of their ancestry. Families had been separated, wands confiscated, lives destroyed. Now the commission itself faced judgment. Records were seized. Hearings were conducted. Victims were invited to share their experiences. The stories shocked even seasoned ministry officials. Many citizens had never fully understood the scale of the abuse. Now they did, and public outrage grew rapidly. Kingsley ensured the commission would never operate again. Its authority was permanently revoked, its practices formally condemned, its victims officially recognized. For many Muggle-born families, this represented more than a legal victory. It represented validation. An acknowledgement that what happened to them had been wrong. That mattered, more than politicians often realize. At the same time, efforts began to locate those who had disappeared during the war. Some had gone into hiding. Others had fled abroad. Many simply feared returning home. The ministry launched programs designed to help survivors rebuild their lives. Housing assistance, employment opportunities, legal protections, support networks. The process moved slowly, but it moved. And after years of darkness, progress itself felt revolutionary. Yet political reform was only one part of the challenge. The economy had suffered severe damage. Businesses struggled. Trade routes had been disrupted. Entire communities remained unstable. Diagon Alley provided a visible example. Many storefronts sat empty. Some owners had been killed. Others had fled. Several shops remained boarded shut months after the war. Visitors could still see scars left by years of uncertainty. But gradually those scars began to fade. Merchants returned. Customers returned. Investments returned. Life returned. The recovery was not dramatic. It was not sudden. It happened one business at a time, one family at a time, one street at a time. That was how reconstruction worked. Not through miracles, through persistence. Meanwhile, another problem emerged. Fear. Even after Voldemort's death, fear remained everywhere. Children woke from nightmares. Adults checked locks multiple times each night. Crowded places made people nervous. Trust had been damaged. And unlike buildings, trust cannot be repaired with a wand. Healers at St. Mungo's reported unprecedented numbers of trauma-related cases. Patients suffered panic attacks, anxiety, depression, survivor's guilt. Symptoms that magical medicine struggled to treat. Potions could heal injuries. Spells could repair bones, but emotional wounds required something different. Time, support, community. The entire wizarding world was learning that lesson together. Kingsley recognized the importance of mental recovery early. He authorized expanded resources for healing programs. Support groups appeared throughout magical Britain. Families received assistance. Orphans received protection. Communities received funding. Some critics complained the programs cost too much. Kingsley ignored them. He understood the truth. A society that neglects its wounded eventually becomes wounded itself. Rebuilding people mattered just as much as rebuilding institutions, perhaps more. While these efforts unfolded, another critical question dominated public discussion. What should happen to the Death Eaters? The war had ended. The trials were coming. Citizens demanded justice. Victims demanded accountability. Newspapers demanded answers. The issue divided public opinion. Some wanted harsh punishment. Others argued for mercy in certain cases. Still, others worried about repeating the mistakes of the past. Kingsley listened carefully. The decisions ahead would shape the moral foundation of the new era. Handle them poorly and resentment could grow. Handle them correctly, and healing might become possible. The stakes were enormous. Every trial would send a message. Every verdict would define the future. Meanwhile, Harry Potter watched many of these developments from a distance. Though the public viewed him as the hero of the war, he had no desire to become a politician. That surprised many observers. Newspapers speculated endlessly about his future. Would he enter government? Would he run for office? Would he become Minister for Magic one day? Harry ignored the rumors. Power had never interested him. Purpose interested him. There was a difference. A significant difference. As weeks turned into months, signs of recovery continued appearing across Britain. Children returned to school. Families celebrated birthdays. Quidditch matches resumed. The Daily Prophet slowly shifted away from war coverage. People began planning futures instead of merely surviving presents. Hope returned. Tentatively, cautiously, but genuinely. For the first time in many years, the wizarding world could imagine tomorrow. Yet one enormous challenge still remained unresolved. The architects of Voldemort's regime had not disappeared. Many sat imprisoned awaiting trial. Others insisted they had been victims themselves. Some denied responsibility altogether. The public demanded answers. The ministry demanded accountability, and soon, the most significant courtroom proceedings in modern wizarding history would begin. Because rebuilding a nation required more than reconstruction. It required justice. And the trials that followed would determine whether the wizarding world truly learned from its darkest chapter. The era of war was ending. The era of judgment was about to begin. As the Ministry of Magic slowly rebuilt itself under Kingsley Shacklebolt's leadership, another challenge loomed over the wizarding world. Justice. The war had ended. The celebrations had faded. The funerals had been held. The rebuilding had begun. But there remained one question that nobody could ignore. What should happen to those who helped Voldemort seize power? Across Britain, emotions ran high. Entire families had been torn apart. Children had lost parents. Parents had buried children. Communities had suffered years of fear and persecution. Many survivors demanded punishment. Others demanded accountability. A few argued for forgiveness, yet nearly everyone agreed on one thing. The truth needed to be heard. The trials began during the summer of 1998. For the first time since Voldemort's defeat, the attention of the entire wizarding world shifted toward the ministry's courtrooms. Every hearing carried enormous significance. Every verdict would help define the future. People packed public galleries. Newspapers printed daily updates. Conversations in pubs and homes revolved around the same topic: who deserved mercy and who did not. Among the first major defendants were Amicus and Alecto Carrow. Their names had become symbols of Hogwarts' darkest year. Under Voldemort's rule, the Carrows transformed the school from a place of learning into a place of fear. Students remembered them vividly, not as teachers, as enforcers. Amicus delighted in cruelty. Punishments became entertainment. Fear became policy. Humiliation became routine. Meanwhile, Alecto helped spread the poisonous ideology that had infected magical society for generations. Together, they turned Hogwarts into something unrecognizable. Now they sat before the Wizengamot in chains. Gone were the confident smiles. Gone were the threats. Gone was the illusion of power. Witnesses appeared one after another. Students described brutal punishments. Parents described terrified children returning home. Teachers described constant intimidation. The evidence seemed endless. For hours, the courtroom listened. The silence often felt heavier than the testimony itself, because everyone understood what these stories represented. Not isolated incidents, a system of abuse. When the verdict finally arrived, few were surprised. Both Carrows received life sentences in Azkaban. The decision was met with widespread approval. Many believed it was one of the clearest cases presented during the entire process. For survivors, the verdict offered a measure of closure. Not healing. Healing would take years, but closure. And sometimes that mattered. Yet not every trial proved so straightforward. Soon another infamous name appeared before the court, Antonin Dolohov. Unlike many Death Eaters, Dolohov had remained loyal to Voldemort from beginning to end. His history stretched across both wizarding wars. Murder, torture, conspiracy, violence. His record read like a catalogue of suffering. Witnesses described attacks that spanned decades. Families recounted losses that still haunted them. Former Order members detailed operations where Dolohov's curses left devastation behind. Unlike some defendants, he offered little defense, little regret, little remorse. That fact influenced public opinion dramatically. Many citizens had shown willingness to consider individual circumstances. Dolohov provided none. His sentence arrived swiftly. Life imprisonment. No possibility of release. The wizarding public largely viewed the outcome as inevitable. Some individuals had simply chosen darkness repeatedly. The evidence made that impossible to deny. Yet, while trials like Dolohov's generated agreement, one family divided public opinion more than any other. The Malfoys. Their situation was extraordinarily complicated. Lucius Malfoy had unquestionably supported Voldemort. His wealth had financed dangerous movements. His influence had strengthened extremist causes. His decisions contributed directly to countless tragedies. That much was undeniable. Yet the final months of the war had revealed a more complex reality. The Malfoy family itself had become trapped inside the system it helped create. Fear replaced loyalty. Survival replaced ideology. And by the Battle of Hogwarts, their priorities had changed dramatically. The courtroom remained packed throughout the proceedings. Every seat filled. Every newspaper reporter present. Every citizen eager for answers. Would the Malfoys be punished? Would they escape justice? Would mercy prevail? Nobody knew. Then came the testimony that changed everything. Narcissa Malfoy. Throughout much of her life, she had remained a loyal supporter of her family's values. Yet one moment in the Forbidden Forest altered history forever. Standing over Harry Potter's seemingly lifeless body, Narcissa faced a choice. Tell Voldemort the truth, or lie. She chose to lie. Not because she suddenly embraced heroism, not because she joined the resistance, because she loved her son. That single lie allowed Harry to survive. That survival ultimately led to Voldemort's downfall. The courtroom listened carefully as witnesses reconstructed those events. The implications proved impossible to ignore. History itself had turned on that decision. Then another surprise occurred. Harry Potter personally appeared. The room fell silent. Many expected him to demand harsh punishment. Many assumed he would support the strictest possible interpretation of justice. Instead, Harry offered nuance. He described Draco's hesitation during critical moments of the war. He described Narcissa's actions in the forest. He described fear, confusion, complexity. His testimony shocked many observers. Some newspapers criticized him immediately. Others praised his honesty. Public debate intensified overnight. Yet Harry remained consistent. Justice mattered. But justice required understanding circumstances. The decision generated enormous controversy. For months, citizens argued about whether the outcome was appropriate. Even years later, opinions remained divided, but the ministry stood by its judgment. The goal was justice. not revenge. That distinction mattered deeply to Kingsley Shacklebolt. He understood that societies built upon vengeance often create future conflicts. Societies built upon law create stability. One decision during this period perhaps symbolized that philosophy better than any other. The future of Azkaban. For centuries, the prison had relied upon Dementors. Dark creatures that fed upon despair. Creatures that represented fear itself. Under Voldemort, many Dementors openly supported darkness. Their loyalty proved unreliable. Their methods proved cruel. Their existence raised uncomfortable moral questions. Now the Ministry faced a choice. Continue using them, or embrace change. Kingsley chose change. The decision shocked traditionalists. Some officials argued Dementors remained effective. Others worried alternative systems would fail. Kingsley ignored the criticism. He believed justice should not depend upon creatures that consumed human suffering. Gradually, the Dementors were removed. New security measures replaced them. Human guards, improved magical protections, modern oversight. The transformation took time, but eventually Azkaban became something different. Still a prison. Still secure. Yet no longer defined by psychological torment. The reform symbolized something larger. The wizarding world was rejecting old methods, rejecting old assumptions, rejecting the belief that fear represented the best tool of governance. That philosophy had already caused enough damage. By the end of the trials, dozens of convictions had been secured. Countless victims had shared their stories. Important truths had entered the public record. The process remained painful, sometimes controversial, often emotional, but necessary. Because nations cannot move forward without confronting the past. The trials provided that confrontation. Yet while judges delivered verdicts and newspapers debated outcomes, attention slowly began shifting elsewhere, back toward Hogwarts. The castle still carried scars. Physical scars, emotional scars, historical scars. And now the work of rebuilding Britain's most famous school was about to begin. What emerged from those ruins would shape an entirely new generation. Because Hogwarts itself was preparing for a transformation unlike anything in its history. And for Harry, Ron, Hermione, Neville, and countless others, the next chapter of their lives was only beginning. As the final Death Eater trials concluded, and the wizarding world slowly turned its attention away from courtrooms and convictions, another challenge demanded immediate attention: Hogwarts. The castle had survived, but survival and recovery were not the same thing. The Battle of Hogwarts had left scars visible from miles away. Broken towers pierced the skyline. Sections of ancient walls lay shattered across the grounds. Windows that had overlooked generations of students now stood empty and jagged. The Great Hall, once filled with celebrations and feasts, still carried reminders of the night that changed history forever. For many witches and wizards, Hogwarts was more than a school. It was home, a symbol, a living piece of magical history. Allowing it to remain damaged was never an option. The rebuilding began almost immediately. Teams of skilled witches and wizards arrived from every corner of Britain. Master craftsmen, architects, ward specialists, historians. Many had never met one another before, yet they worked together with remarkable purpose. They understood what was at stake. This was not simply a construction project. It was a restoration of hope. Day after day, the castle echoed with magical repairs. Broken stone fused together. Collapsed corridors reappeared. Ancient towers slowly regained their former shape. Spells illuminated scaffolding that floated hundreds of feet above the ground. For months, Hogwarts resembled a giant living workshop. Every repaired wall represented something larger than architecture. It represented resilience. The message was simple. Voldemort could damage Hogwarts, but he could never destroy it. Professor McGonagall oversaw much of the reconstruction. The responsibility rested heavily upon her shoulders. For decades, she had dedicated her life to the school. Now she found herself responsible for guiding it through perhaps the most difficult period in its history. Students often remembered McGonagall as strict, disciplined, demanding. Yet throughout the rebuilding effort, many witnessed another side of her. a quieter side, a deeply protective side. She personally reviewed restoration plans, inspected repairs, met with grieving families, and ensured the memory of those lost would never be forgotten. One of the most important decisions involved creating a permanent memorial. The fallen would not simply become names in history books. Their sacrifices deserved something greater. Within Hogwarts, a memorial space slowly took shape. Visitors could walk through its halls and remember those who gave everything during the war. Students, teachers, parents, friends, heroes. The names varied. The sacrifices did not. Every generation that followed would understand the price of freedom. Meanwhile, the future paths of the Golden Trio began to separate for the first time. Throughout the war, Harry, Ron, and Hermione had been inseparable. Their lives moved together. Their decisions affected one another. Their survival depended upon one another. Now peace created something unfamiliar. Choice. And with choice came different directions. For Harry Potter, the decision arrived surprisingly quickly. Returning to school no longer felt possible. Ideas seemed almost unreal. How could he sit in classrooms discussing exam preparation after everything that had happened? How could he worry about homework while helping rebuild an entire world? The war had changed him. Not just emotionally. Fundamentally, Harry understood that his future lay elsewhere. He wanted action, purpose, responsibility. The classroom chapter of his life had ended. Ron Weasley reached a similar conclusion. Although his reasoning differed slightly, the outcome remained the same. Like Harry, Ron felt transformed by the war. Years of danger had forced him to mature faster than most people his age. The thought of returning for another academic year simply did not appeal to him. School felt like a chapter already completed. He wanted to move forward, to help shape the future directly, not prepare for it from behind a desk. For the first time since arriving at Hogwarts as nervous first years, Harry and Ron would not return as students. Their school journey was over. Yet one member of the trio made a very different choice: Hermione Granger. To many observers, her decision seemed surprising. After everything she had accomplished during the war, no qualification remained necessary. Nobody questioned her intelligence. Nobody doubted her capability. She could have stepped directly into almost any position she wanted. Yet Hermione chose to return. She insisted on completing her education, finishing her final year properly, sitting her examinations, graduating on her own terms. For Hermione, the decision was not about credentials. It was about principle. Education had always mattered to her, not because of grades, because knowledge represented opportunity. Throughout her life, books had given her confidence, direction, understanding. Returning to Hogwarts felt right, not because she needed to, because she wanted to. When she walked back through the castle gates, she carried a unique perspective. Unlike ordinary students, Hermione returned as a war hero, someone whose actions had helped save the wizarding world. Yet she never viewed herself that way. She approached her studies with the same determination she always had. Long hours in the library, detailed notes, meticulous preparation. Some things never changed. Friends joked that Hermione might be the only person in Britain capable of treating post-war education as seriously as a life-or-death mission. The jokes were not entirely inaccurate. While Hermione focused on completing her studies, another hero discovered an entirely different calling: Neville Longbottom. Few people had undergone a more dramatic transformation during the war. The nervous boy who once struggled with confidence had become one of Hogwarts' greatest defenders. He had led resistance efforts, defied impossible odds, and ultimately played a critical role in Voldemort's downfall. Many assumed Neville would pursue a prestigious ministry career, perhaps even politics. Some predicted leadership positions. Others imagined him becoming an Auror. Yet Neville surprised everyone, including himself. His passion lay elsewhere: plants, herbology, life, growth. During the rebuilding of Hogwarts, Neville spent increasing amounts of time in the greenhouses. What began as simple assistance gradually became something more: a purpose, a direction. The war had taken enough life. Neville wanted to help things grow again. Professor Sprout quickly recognized his extraordinary talent. Few students understood magical plants as naturally as Neville. His connection to the subject seemed instinctive, effortless, almost magical in itself. Before long, discussions began about apprenticeships, future teaching opportunities, long-term roles at Hogwarts. The idea appealed to Neville far more than fame or recognition ever could. He had spent years proving himself. Now he wanted peace. The greenhouses provided exactly that. Among rare plants and enchanted flowers, Neville discovered a future that felt genuinely his. Not a future chosen by prophecy. Not a future shaped by public expectation. His own future. The rebuilding of Hogwarts continued month after month. Eventually students returned, corridors filled with laughter again. Lessons resumed. Quidditch discussions echoed through common rooms. The castle felt alive. Different, changed, but alive. Yet beneath the renewed sense of normality, everyone understood something important. Hogwarts would never be exactly the same. Too much had happened. Too many memories lingered within its walls. And perhaps that was not a bad thing. The school carried scars because the people inside carried scars. Both had survived. Both had endured. Both continued forward. As the castle entered a new era, Harry and Ron prepared for the next phase of their own lives. The Ministry of Magic had begun changing under Kingsley Shacklebolt. Old systems were being dismantled. New opportunities were emerging. And one department in particular was about to experience a revolution. The Auror Office. For years it had operated under outdated traditions and hidden prejudices. Now everything was about to change, and two young war veterans would soon find themselves at the center of that transformation. Their next mission would not involve defeating Voldemort, it would involve rebuilding justice itself. The reconstruction of Hogwarts had restored a school. The reconstruction of the Auror Office would help restore an entire nation. While Hogwarts entered a new era of healing and reconstruction, Harry Potter and Ron Weasley found themselves standing at a crossroads. For the first time in their lives, nobody was telling them where to go next. No prophecy guided their path. No professor assigned their mission. No dark wizard threatened the future. The war was over. The question now was simple. What came after survival? For Harry, the answer arrived sooner than expected. Only weeks after the Battle of Hogwarts, he received an invitation to visit the Ministry of Magic. The building felt different from the last time he had walked through its vast atrium. The atmosphere of fear had vanished. The oppressive tension that once hung over every corridor was gone. Employees moved with purpose rather than anxiety. Conversations sounded hopeful instead of cautious. For the first time in years, the ministry felt alive. Yet beneath that renewed energy, enormous challenges remained. Kingsley Shacklebolt understood this better than anyone. The new Minister for Magic had inherited a government in desperate need of reform. Entire departments required restructuring. Old policies demanded replacement. Corruption needed to be rooted out completely. Among all those problems, one stood above the rest. The Auror Office. For decades, the department responsible for hunting dark wizards had operated under outdated assumptions and hidden prejudices. Some officers had served honorably, others had failed spectacularly. During Voldemort's rise, the department's weaknesses became impossible to ignore. It had missed warning signs, failed to stop infiltration, allowed dangerous individuals to operate unchecked. Kingsley wanted change, radical change, and he believed Harry Potter could help deliver it. The meeting itself was surprisingly simple. No grand ceremony, no dramatic speeches, just Kingsley sitting behind a desk stacked high with reports and reconstruction plans. Harry arrived expecting a discussion. Instead, he received an offer. Join the Auror Office immediately. No additional schooling required, no traditional qualifications necessary. Kingsley believed Harry's experiences during the war exceeded anything a classroom could provide. After all, Harry had spent years doing work most Aurors never faced in an entire career. He had tracked Horcruxes, infiltrated hostile territory, escaped Death Eaters, investigated magical mysteries, led resistance operations, and ultimately defeated the most dangerous dark wizard of the modern era. Kingsley's reasoning was difficult to argue with. Harry accepted, not because of prestige, not because of fame, because the work mattered. Dark magic had not vanished with Voldemort's death. Dangerous artifacts still existed. Former Death Eaters remained active. The wizarding world still required protection. Harry wanted to help provide it. Ron Weasley soon received the same invitation. His acceptance came even faster. The idea of sitting behind a desk had never appealed to him. Fieldwork did. Action did. Making a tangible difference did. Together, Harry and Ron officially entered the Auror Office. Many veteran officers viewed the decision with curiosity. Some supported it immediately, others remained skeptical. After all, the newest recruits were already among the most famous people in Britain. Fame and competence rarely travelled together, at least according to conventional wisdom. Harry understood those concerns, and he intended to prove himself the old-fashioned way. Through results. The early months proved intense. Although Harry possessed remarkable practical experience, professional law enforcement required new skills. Investigations, evidence collection, interrogation procedures, international cooperation, bureaucratic navigation. The work often felt less glamorous than newspaper headlines suggested. Hours disappeared inside reports and case files. Complex investigations required patience rather than heroics. Yet Harry adapted quickly. So did Ron. The skills developed during the Horcrux hunt translated surprisingly well. Observation, problem-solving, trusting instincts, operating under pressure. The transition felt natural. Meanwhile, Kingsley's broader reforms accelerated. One by one, officials connected to Voldemort's regime disappeared from positions of influence. Some resigned, others faced dismissal. A few faced criminal charges. The message was unmistakable. The old ministry would not survive. A new one was being built. The Auror Office became one of the primary testing grounds for that philosophy. For years, advancement within the department often depended upon connections and family reputation. Kingsley wanted merit instead. Performance, character, ability. The change attracted new recruits from backgrounds previously underrepresented in magical law enforcement. Muggle-born witches and wizards joined in greater numbers. Half-blood applicants found opportunities expanding. Individuals once overlooked suddenly received serious consideration. The culture began shifting, slowly at first, then rapidly. Harry found himself at the center of that transformation. His reputation carried influence whether he wanted it or not. People watched his decisions, his actions, his leadership style. Unlike some famous figures, Harry never attempted to leverage status for personal gain. That authenticity earned respect, even among experienced officers. As years passed, Harry's responsibilities expanded. Successful investigations accumulated. Dangerous dark artifacts were recovered. Criminal networks were dismantled. International operations strengthened cooperation between magical governments. Case after case enhanced his reputation, not as the boy who lived. As a professional, as an Auror. Eventually promotions followed. Then more promotions. By his late 20s, Harry achieved something unprecedented. He became head of the Auror Office, the youngest individual ever to hold the position. The announcement dominated newspaper headlines. Yet those who worked alongside him were not surprised. They had witnessed the journey firsthand. The long hours, the difficult decisions, the relentless commitment. Harry had earned the role, not through fame, through performance. As department head, he continued pushing reform. Training standards improved. Recruitment expanded. Oversight increased. Corruption decreased dramatically. The Auror Office became more proactive, more transparent, more effective. Citizens noticed the difference. Trust slowly returned. The department no longer felt like an isolated institution serving itself. It felt like a public service. Exactly as Kingsley intended. Ron remained one of Harry's closest allies throughout the transformation. His strengths complemented Harry's perfectly. Where Harry tended toward intensity, Ron provided balance. Where Harry focused on long-term strategy, Ron often noticed practical, but over time, the constant pressure took its toll. Long investigations, dangerous assignments, endless paperwork. The excitement gradually gave way to routine. Ron found himself thinking more often about family, about home, about George, and about the future beyond law enforcement. He never discussed those thoughts publicly, at least not initially, but they grew stronger with each passing year. Harry noticed. Friends always do. Though Ron continued performing exceptionally well, something had shifted. The fire remained. The direction was changing. For now, however, both men remained focused on rebuilding the department. The wizarding world depended upon it. Every successful investigation strengthened public confidence. Every dangerous artifact removed from circulation made communities safer. Every reform helped ensure Voldemort's mistakes would never be repeated. The Auror Revolution was working. The department had become a symbol of post-war recovery, a reminder that institutions could improve, that lessons could be learned, that progress was possible. Yet, while Harry and Ron transformed magical law enforcement from within, another member of the Golden Trio was preparing her own revolution, and hers would prove every bit as significant. Because Hermione Granger had finished her education, and she was about to enter the Ministry of Magic, not as a war hero, not as Harry Potter's friend, but as one of the most brilliant legal minds of her generation. The battles ahead would not involve curses or duels. They would involve laws, rights, equality, and the future of magical society itself. A new chapter was about to begin, and Hermione Granger was ready for it. While Harry Potter and Ron Weasley transformed the Auror Office into a modern force for justice, Hermione Granger stepped onto a battlefield of an entirely different kind. There would be no duels, no chases through dark forests, no final confrontations beneath castle walls. Instead, her enemies would be older, more deeply rooted, and in many ways, far more difficult to defeat. Prejudice, tradition, bureaucracy. The war had taught Hermione something important. Voldemort had not created the wizarding world's problems. He had simply exploited them. Long before his return, inequality already existed. Certain groups enjoyed privileges others could never access. Entire communities were treated as second-class citizens. Many injustices had become so normal that people stopped questioning them altogether. Hermione never stopped questioning them. That was who she had always been. Even as a student, she challenged systems others accepted without thought. She questioned unfair rules, defended the vulnerable, refused to ignore suffering simply because it was traditional. Now, armed with experience, education, and a reputation earned during the war, she finally possessed the opportunity to create real change. Her ministry career began inside the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. To many observers, the decision seemed strange. Friends expected her to pursue magical law immediately. Some predicted politics, others imagined international diplomacy. Few understood why she chose a department often overlooked by ambitious young witches and wizards. Hermione understood perfectly. This was where some of the oldest injustices remained hidden, and hidden problems rarely solve themselves. From her very first day, she approached the job with characteristic intensity. Most new employees spent weeks learning procedures. Hermione spent those same weeks studying decades of legislation. She reviewed reports, examined historical records, compared policies, interviewed officials. The deeper she looked, the more concerned she became. The treatment of magical creatures revealed uncomfortable truths about wizarding society. House elves remained trapped within systems that denied them basic freedoms. Goblins continued facing restrictions that limited opportunities and influence. Other intelligent magical beings encountered similar obstacles. Many of these policies had existed for centuries. That fact did not make them right. Hermione knew changing them would prove difficult, perhaps impossible. But difficult challenges had never discouraged her before. If anything, they motivated her. The first months were frustrating. Painfully frustrating. Hermione quickly discovered that government reform moved much slower than defeating dark wizards. In war, problems often appear clearly. In government, Problems hide behind paperwork, committees, procedures, technicalities, meetings, endless meetings. Some officials agreed with her concerns. Many did not. Others preferred avoiding controversy entirely. After all, challenging long-established traditions carried political risks. It was easier to maintain the status quo. Hermione refused. She spent countless hours drafting proposals, researching alternatives, building coalitions, convincing colleagues. One small victory at a time, progress came slowly, almost invisibly. A revised policy here, a new protection there, a funding increase somewhere else. Individually, each achievement appeared modest. Collectively, they began changing lives. House elves gained greater legal protections, employment standards improved, abuse cases received increased scrutiny, educational opportunities expanded. The changes were not revolutionary, not yet, but they represented movement, and movement mattered. Meanwhile, Hermione's reputation inside the ministry continued growing. Co-workers quickly realized they were dealing with someone extraordinary. She possessed an unusual combination of intelligence and determination. Many people understood problems. Many people worked hard. Few did both at Hermione's level. Senior officials began paying attention. So did Kingsley Shacklebolt. The Minister for Magic appreciated talented individuals who focused on results rather than publicity. Hermione embodied that philosophy perfectly. Years passed. Gradually, her influence expanded. The wizarding world itself continued evolving. The post-war generation entered adulthood. Old assumptions faced new scrutiny. Conversations that once seemed impossible became increasingly common. Equality, representation, accountability. The ideas gained momentum. Hermione helped drive that momentum. Even when progress felt painfully slow, even when opponents resisted, even when setbacks occurred, because setbacks always occur. No meaningful reform happens without resistance. The question is whether you stop. Hermione never stopped. Eventually, she confronted a difficult realization. The Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures allowed her to address symptoms. But larger problems existed elsewhere. The legal system itself required reform. Policies affecting millions originated in different departments. If she wanted broader change, she needed broader authority. The opportunity arrived sooner than expected. A transfer to the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Many colleagues viewed the move as inevitable. Hermione's talents had outgrown her current position. The new department presented fresh challenges, bigger challenges, more complex challenges, but also greater opportunities. Here she encountered the machinery of wizarding law itself. Investigations, regulations, enforcement procedures, oversight structures, everything that determined how justice functioned across magical Britain. The deeper she looked, the more work she found. Some procedures remained outdated, others contained loopholes. Several favored powerful families over ordinary citizens. Certain cases moved quickly. Others disappeared mysteriously. Patterns emerged. Patterns that concerned her. Hermione responded the only way she knew how. She got to work. Files accumulated across her desk. Reports multiplied. Recommendations expanded. Long evenings became normal. Weekends often disappeared. Friends occasionally worried she was working too hard. They were probably correct. Yet Hermione remained convinced the effort mattered. Because it did. The reforms she championed gradually reshaped entire systems. Oversight increased. Transparency improved. Corruption became more difficult to hide. Victims received stronger protections. Investigations became more thorough. Public confidence slowly improved. The changes did not happen overnight. They rarely do. Real reform resembles construction more than magic. You build, layer by layer, piece by piece. Year after year, Harry and Ron frequently witnessed that process firsthand. Both remained deeply involved in law enforcement. Their work often intersected with Hermione's. Professional cooperation became common. So did friendly debates. The three friends still shared many evenings discussing the future of the wizarding world. Some conversations lasted hours. Harry focused on practical enforcement. Ron emphasized common sense. Hermione examined legal frameworks. Together, they often viewed problems from entirely different perspectives. That diversity proved valuable. Many of the reforms that shaped post-war Britain emerged from countless discussions like those. Conversations between friends determined to leave the world better than they found it. By the time Hermione reached senior leadership positions, her impact was impossible to ignore. Young employees cited her as inspiration. Experienced officials respected her judgment. Citizens increasingly recognized her contributions. Yet she remained remarkably unchanged. Still prepared. Still organized. Still carrying enough notes to overwhelm most filing systems. Some habits never disappear. Fortunately, neither does conviction. The wizarding world entering the new century looked dramatically different from the one Hermione inherited after the war. Progress remained incomplete. Challenges remained plentiful, but direction mattered, and the direction had changed. Toward fairness, toward accountability, toward opportunity. Much of that shift carried Hermione's fingerprints. Yet while governments reformed and institutions evolved, another story unfolded far from ministry offices. A more personal story. A painful story. One involving a family that had sacrificed more than almost any other during the war. The Weasleys. Because although the world celebrated victory, grief does not disappear simply because peace arrives. At the Burrow, one empty chair continued reminding everyone of that truth, and the loss of Fred Weasley would shape the family for years to come. Wars rarely end when the fighting stops. History often remembers victories through dates, treaties, and celebrations. But families remember wars differently. Families remember the empty chairs, the missing voices, the birthdays that arrive without someone to celebrate them, the jokes that suddenly lose their punchline. For the Weasley family, peace arrived carrying a wound that would never completely heal. Fred Weasley was gone. And nothing, not even victory, could change that. The Burrow had survived the war. Its crooked walls still leaned at impossible angles. Its garden still overflowed with stubborn gnomes. Its kitchen remained filled with the familiar scents of Molly Weasley's cooking. From a distance, everything appeared unchanged. But anyone who stepped inside immediately felt the difference. Something was missing. Someone was missing. For years, Fred's energy had filled every corner of the house. His laughter seemed permanently woven into the walls themselves. Every staircase carried memories of his pranks. Every room contained traces of his personality. Now silence occupied spaces where laughter once lived. And silence can be surprisingly loud. At first, the family avoided speaking about it. Not intentionally. Grief simply made conversation difficult. Whenever Fred's name surfaced, the room often fell quiet. Eyes drifted toward the table. Thoughts wandered toward memories nobody was ready to revisit. The pain remained too fresh, too sharp, too real. Molly felt it every day. Perhaps more than anyone. As a mother, she had spent her entire life protecting her children. Every scraped knee, every broken broomstick, every childhood illness. She had always found a way to help. But this was different. There was no spell for this. No potion. No magical solution. For the first time in her life, she faced a problem she could not fix. Some mornings she still prepared breakfast, expecting Fred to come racing downstairs late and grinning. Some evenings she caught herself setting an extra place at the table before realizing her mistake. The realization hurt every single time. It never became easier. Not immediately. Across the room, Arthur carried his grief differently. Where Molly expressed emotion openly, Arthur became quieter, more reflective. The usually cheerful father often spent long evenings staring out windows or tinkering absent-mindedly with Muggle devices he was not truly paying attention to. He rarely spoke about Fred, yet everyone understood he thought about him constantly. Parents never stop carrying their children, not even after loss. Perhaps the person most deeply affected was George. After all, Fred had never been just a brother. He had been a twin. From the moment they entered the world, they had shared everything. Experiences, adventures, ideas, dreams. Their lives had unfolded side by side. They finished one another's jokes, completed one another's sentences, understood one another without speaking. People often described them as two halves of the same person. Now one half was gone. The emptiness felt impossible to explain. George tried returning to Weasley's Wizard Wheezes soon after the war. The shop had survived. Business remained strong. Customers still arrived in large numbers. Children still laughed at products. Tourists still crowded the aisles. From the outside, success continued. Inside, everything felt different. Fred was not there. No voice calling from the stockroom. No brilliant idea shouted across the counter. No late-night discussions about new inventions. Every corner of the shop contained reminders. Products they designed together, plans they created together, dreams they built together. For a long time, George simply went through the motions, opening the store, serving customers, managing inventory, pretending everything was normal. But grief has a way of revealing itself eventually. Some days he found himself staring at old design sketches for hours. Other days he avoided certain rooms entirely. The workshop proved especially difficult. Too many memories lived there. Too many unfinished conversations lingered in the air. Employees noticed. Family noticed. George noticed. Yet he refused to quit, because quitting felt like losing Fred twice. The shop represented more than a business. It represented everything the twins had built together. Keeping it alive became a mission, a responsibility, a promise. Meanwhile, the burrow gradually transformed into something unexpected, a place of healing. In the months after the war, family members visited constantly. Bill and Fleur arrived often. Charlie returned whenever his work allowed. Percy spent more time at home than he had in years. Ginny stopped by between commitments. Harry became a regular presence. Hermione too. The house remained full. Not because people wanted company, because nobody wanted to grieve alone. Evenings became especially important. The family gathered around the long wooden table. Meals stretched late into the night. Stories replaced silence. Memories replaced avoidance. Slowly, conversations about Fred became easier. Someone would remember a prank. Another would recall a joke. Before long, laughter appeared again, tentative at first, then genuine. The realization felt strange. How could people laugh while grieving? How could joy exist beside loss? Eventually they discovered the answer, because grief and love occupy the same space. The pain existed, because the love existed. Remembering Fred was not betrayal. It was remembrance. It was honoring him. It was refusing to let his story end. Molly played a crucial role in that transformation. Though her own heart remained broken, she understood something important. Families survive by staying together. She organized dinners, celebrations, gatherings, any excuse to bring people under one roof. Birthdays became important again. Holidays regained meaning. Ordinary moments became precious. The burrow slowly reclaimed its identity, not as a headquarters for resistance, not as a wartime refuge, as a home. The garden reflected that change as well. Children returned. Quidditch games resumed. Laughter echoed across the fields. The sounds of life gradually replaced the sounds of survival. Visitors often noticed the difference immediately. The burrow still carried sadness, always would, but it also carried warmth, resilience, hope. Perhaps that was the greatest lesson the Weasley family taught everyone around them. Healing does not mean forgetting. Healing means continuing, carrying memories forward, making room for both sorrow and happiness, learning to live with absence without allowing absence to define everything. George eventually found his footing again. Not because grief disappeared, because he learned how to carry it. The shop evolved. New products arrived. New ideas emerged. Business expanded. Every success honored Fred's memory. Every laugh generated by a Weasley's Wizard Wheezes product became a tribute to the twin who helped create it. The pain remained. But purpose remained too. And sometimes purpose helps people survive. As years passed, the The burrow became a symbol throughout the wizarding world, not because of fame, not because of politics, because it represented recovery. A family shattered by war that refused to break. A family that chose love over bitterness. A family that proved healing was possible, even after unimaginable loss. Yet while the Weasleys learned to navigate grief, another member of the family was beginning an extraordinary journey of her own. Ginny Weasley, youngest daughter, while the wizarding world rebuilt its institutions and families slowly learned how to live with their losses, Ginny Weasley discovered that peace offered something she had almost forgotten existed: a future. For years, survival had been the priority. First, under the shadow of Voldemort's return, then during the Ministry's collapse, and finally throughout the Battle of Hogwarts itself. Like so many others of her generation, Ginny had spent her teenage years fighting for tomorrow. Now tomorrow had finally arrived, and she intended to make the most of it. Unlike Harry, Ron, or Hermione, Ginny never felt drawn toward government work. The Ministry held little appeal. Politics held even less. Her heart belonged somewhere else entirely. The Quidditch pitch. It always had. Long before she became a resistance fighter. Long before she became one of Hogwarts' bravest defenders. Long before anyone viewed her as a war hero. Ginny had been a flyer. A competitor. A natural athlete whose confidence seemed to multiply the moment her feet left the ground. Friends noticed it immediately. Professors noticed it too. On a broomstick, Ginny transformed. Fear disappeared. Doubt vanished. She moved with complete certainty, as if flying was the language she spoke most fluently. The end of the war provided opportunities that had once seemed impossible. Professional Quidditch teams across Britain resumed recruitment. Leagues reopened. Stadiums filled again. The sport that had brought joy to millions before the war slowly returned to center stage. For many citizens, Quidditch represented something larger than entertainment. It represented normality. A sign that life was moving forward. A sign that people could celebrate again. Ginny entered tryouts determined to earn her place. Not because of her surname. Not because of her role during the war. Because of talent. And talent was something she possessed in abundance. Scouts quickly noticed. Her speed stood out immediately. Her instincts seemed almost supernatural. While other players reacted to movement, Ginny appeared to anticipate it. She saw opportunities before they existed. That ability separated good players from great ones. Before long, offers began arriving. The most significant came from the Holyhead Harpies. The legendary all-female Quidditch team possessed one of the most respected reputations in the sport. Joining their ranks represented a dream for countless young witches. For Ginny, it represented validation. Proof that she belonged among the elite. When the contract was finalized, excitement spread rapidly. Weasley family celebrations followed almost immediately. Molly cried. Arthur smiled proudly. Ron spent weeks reminding everyone that he had taught her everything she knew. Nobody believed him, least of all Ginny. Training began soon afterward. Professional sports demanded a level of commitment entirely different from school competitions. The pace increased dramatically. Expectations rose. Mistakes carried consequences. Every player on the team had been exceptional at Hogwarts. Now they competed against other exceptional athletes. Talent alone no longer guaranteed success. Work ethic mattered. Discipline mattered. Consistency mattered. Fortunately, Ginny possessed all three. She trained relentlessly. Morning practices, evening conditioning, tactical reviews, film analysis. The workload surprised many newcomers. It energized Ginny. Every challenge pushed her further. Every obstacle strengthened her resolve. Her debut season exceeded expectations. Fans quickly embraced her. Sports journalists praised her fearlessness. Opposing teams learned to take her seriously. Within a remarkably short period of time, she established herself as one of the league's most exciting young players. Stadium crowds responded accordingly. Her name began appearing regularly in headlines. Her performances attracted increasing attention. Success seemed to arrive almost effortlessly. Yet fame carries complications. especially when your boyfriend happens to be Harry Potter. The wizarding press never missed an opportunity. Reporters followed their relationship obsessively. Photographers appeared everywhere. Every public appearance generated speculation. Every interaction became a story. Some articles focused on Quidditch. Many focused on Harry. Ginny found the imbalance frustrating. She had worked incredibly hard to earn professional recognition, yet certain journalists insisted on framing every achievement through the lens of her relationship. Instead of discussing her performances, they discussed her personal life. Instead of analyzing her statistics, they analyzed her romance. At first, the attention annoyed her. Later, it exhausted her. Eventually, she learned to ignore it, because she understood something important. Public perception and reality rarely match. The headlines knew very little about her actual life, very little about her actual work, very little about the sacrifices required to succeed. The people who mattered understood. That was enough. Harry certainly understood, perhaps better than anyone. After all, he had spent most of his life trapped beneath public scrutiny. He knew exactly how exhausting fame could become. Their shared experiences created a unique understanding between them. Neither needed lengthy explanations. Neither needed sympathy. Both understood the pressures automatically. That understanding strengthened their relationship considerably. As years passed, Ginny continued developing as both a player and public figure. Championship matches, national recognition, endorsements, awards. The accomplishments accumulated steadily. Young witches began viewing her as a role model. A generation of aspiring athletes studied her performances, copied her techniques, dreamed of following her path. Ginny handled the responsibility thoughtfully. She remembered what it felt like to be young, to search for examples worth following. She understood influence carried obligations. The role suited her surprisingly well. Yet professional sports eventually confront every athlete with the same reality. Time. No matter how talented someone becomes, careers do not last forever. Injuries accumulate. Reflexes slow. Recovery becomes harder. The transition arrived gradually rather than suddenly. A difficult collision here. A longer recovery there. Nothing catastrophic. Just reminders that even extraordinary athletes remain human. Ginny recognized the signs earlier than most fans did. She remained capable of competing at a high level, but she also understood the importance of leaving on her own terms. The decision proved difficult. Quidditch had shaped her identity for years. Walking away felt almost impossible. Yet deep down, she knew another chapter awaited. Retirement from professional play did not end her connection to the sport. Instead, it transformed it. The Daily Prophet offered a position covering Quidditch as a correspondent and analyst. Many readers expected a ceremonial role. They quickly discovered otherwise. Ginny approached journalism with the same intensity she brought to competition. Her articles stood out immediately. Insightful, honest, detailed. She understood the game from the inside. She recognized tactical nuances casual observers missed. Players respected her analysis. Fans appreciated her perspective. Editors loved the readership numbers. The transition succeeded beyond expectations. Once again, Ginny proved capable of reinventing herself. By this stage, she and Harry had become one of the most recognizable couples in Britain, yet their relationship remained remarkably grounded. Friends often commented on it. Observers expected drama, scandal, complications. Instead, they found partnership, mutual respect, support. Harry pursued his responsibilities within the Auror office. Ginny pursued her growing media career. Neither attempted to overshadow the other. Neither sacrificed personal ambitions. They built something rare. A relationship based on equality, on understanding, on shared experience. Their home eventually became a place filled with laughter rather than headlines. Children arrived. Family traditions formed. Ordinary moments became treasured. The fame never disappeared completely, but it stopped defining their lives. That distinction mattered enormously, because both Harry and Ginny had spent enough years defined by forces beyond their control. Now they finally controlled their own story. Yet, even as Ginny's star continued rising, and the next generation began growing up in peace, Harry found himself increasingly drawn toward the past, toward memories, toward unanswered questions, and toward one man whose legacy remained more controversial than almost anyone else in wizarding history. Severus Snape. The war had revealed truths that challenged everything people believed they knew. But understanding those truths would prove far more complicated than uncovering them, because heroes are rarely perfect, villains are rarely simple, and no figure embodied that reality more completely than the former potions master of Hogwarts. The debate over Severus Snape was only beginning. History has a habit of simplifying people. Heroes become flawless. Villains become monsters. Complex lives are reduced to simple labels. The truth is usually far messier. And nowhere was that more evident than in the story of Severus Snape. In the months following Voldemort's defeat, the wizarding world focused primarily on reconstruction. Buildings were repaired, governments reformed, families healed. Yet beneath the surface, debates continued about the people who had shaped the war. Some names inspired universal admiration, others inspired universal condemnation. Snape belonged to neither category. His legacy existed somewhere in between, complicated, uncomfortable, difficult to define. Most of the wizarding public knew only fragments of the truth. For years, Severus Snape had appeared to be exactly what he seemed: a former Death Eater, a cold professor, a man whose loyalties remained uncertain until the very end. Then the truth emerged, and everything changed. Harry Potter carried that truth. Few people understood Snape's sacrifices better than he did. After witnessing the memories contained within the pensieve, Harry possessed knowledge that almost nobody else could fully comprehend. He had seen the hidden war, the secret struggle, the impossible balancing act Snape maintained for nearly 2 decades. A double life so dangerous that a single mistake could have meant death. The realization changed Harry forever, not because it erased Snape's flaws, because it revealed the cost of his choices. For years, Snape had lived in constant isolation, distrusted by both sides, hated by many, understood by almost no one. Everything he did carried enormous risk. Every conversation, every decision, every lie, every act. One wrong move could have destroyed everything. Yet he continued, year after year, without recognition, without gratitude, without certainty that anyone would ever know the truth. Harry found himself thinking about that often, especially during quiet moments, especially after the war. The more he reflected, the more convinced he became that history deserved accuracy, not mythology, accuracy. And accuracy required acknowledging what Severus Snape had truly done. The campaign began quietly. Harry was not interested in publicity. He was not trying to start a movement. He simply wanted the facts recognized. Conversations with ministry officials led to discussions. Discussions led to reviews. Reviews led to debates. Soon the issue spread throughout the wizarding world. Newspapers published articles. Opinion columns appeared. Letters flooded editorial offices. The public became divided. Very divided. Some people immediately embraced the new narrative. They viewed Snape as a tragic hero. A man who sacrificed everything to help defeat Voldemort. A spy whose courage had remained hidden for years. Others rejected that interpretation completely. They remembered a different Snape. A cruel teacher, an intimidating authority figure. Someone who seemed to take pleasure in humiliating students. Those memories were real too. That was the problem. Both versions existed simultaneously. Neither cancelled out the other. The debate intensified rapidly. In Diagon Alley, strangers argued over butterbeer. Ministry employees debated during lunch breaks. Former students revisited old experiences. Parents questioned assumptions. Everyone seemed to have an opinion, and very few agreed. Harry understood why. He had struggled with the same conflict himself. The memories had not transformed Snape into a saint. They had simply revealed a fuller picture, a more human picture, one filled with contradictions. Snape remained bitter. He remained flawed. He remained capable of cruelty. Yet he also displayed extraordinary courage, extraordinary loyalty, extraordinary sacrifice. Accepting all those truths simultaneously proved difficult. Many people preferred simpler stories. Life rarely provides them. As public debate continued, Harry focused on one specific objective: the restoration of Snape's portrait inside the headmaster's office. Traditionally, headmasters who served Hogwarts received portraits after death. Snape's portrait remained absent. The circumstances surrounding his final years complicated matters. Some officials questioned whether he deserved the honor. Harry disagreed strongly. Regardless of personal opinions, Snape had served as headmaster. More importantly, he had helped save the wizarding world. History could not simply ignore that. The discussions lasted months, perhaps longer. Nothing involving Severus Snape happened easily. Eventually, however, attitudes began shifting. Evidence accumulated. Testimonies emerged. Former Order members spoke publicly. Individuals who knew fragments of the truth added their voices. Slowly, resistance weakened, not because everyone changed their minds, because the facts became impossible to dismiss. The portrait was eventually restored. Its placement inside the headmaster's office carried symbolic significance. It represented acknowledgement, recognition, a willingness to confront complexity rather than avoid it. Yet Harry's personal journey with Snape extended beyond public debates. Many evenings found him revisiting the pensieve, returning to those memories, studying moments he previously overlooked. The experience remained emotionally exhausting. Each visit revealed new details, new perspectives, new questions. He watched Lily Evans laugh beneath summer sunlight. He watched young Severus struggle with loneliness. He watched friendships form and fracture. Dreams rise and collapse. Choices create consequences. The memories felt painfully human, because they were. For years, Harry viewed his life as a battle between good and evil. The pensieve challenged that framework. People were not categories. People were choices. Thousands of choices. Some noble. Some selfish. Some courageous. Some destructive. Severus Snape embodied that reality more completely than almost anyone. A man capable of both kindness and cruelty, both loyalty and bitterness, both heroism and failure. Understanding that truth helped Harry mature. It forced him to abandon simplistic judgments. It forced him to see people as they truly were: complicated, imperfect, human. As the years passed, those lessons remained with him, especially when he became a father, because parenthood changes perspective. Suddenly, the future matters more than the past. Legacy matters. Names matter. Stories matter. When Harry and Ginny welcomed their second son into the world, they faced the same challenge every parent faces: choosing a name. For most families, the decision carries emotional significance. For Harry Potter, the decision carried history. Every possible choice felt meaningful. Every possibility connected to memories, to sacrifices, to people who shaped his life. Eventually, he settled on a name: Albus Severus Potter. The announcement immediately generated discussion. Some understood the choice. Others questioned it. A few criticized it openly. Why honor Dumbledore? Why honor Snape? Why connect two men whose relationship ended in tragedy? Harry never viewed the decision as controversial. To him, it felt honest. Albus Dumbledore represented wisdom, guidance, belief in second chances. Severus Snape represented sacrifice, redemption, the complicated reality of human nature. Together, the names told a story, not of perfection, of growth, of learning, of understanding. Years later, that meaning would become especially important. On platform 9 3/4, on the day young Albus prepared to board the Hogwarts Express. Nervous, uncertain, afraid, Harry knelt beside his son and shared the truth. Truth shaped by years of reflection, years of experience, years of understanding. You were named after two headmasters of Hogwarts. The words carried enormous weight. One of them was a Slytherin. Harry smiled gently. And he was probably the bravest man I ever knew. That statement surprised many readers when they first encountered it. Yet for Harry, it represented the conclusion of a long journey. Not forgiveness, not forgetfulness, understanding. The ability to recognize courage even in unlikely places. The ability to honor sacrifice without ignoring flaws. The ability to see people completely. As the wizarding world entered a new era, the debate surrounding Severus Snape never disappeared entirely. Perhaps it never should. Some stories deserve discussion. Some legacies deserve examination. Some people resist simple conclusions. Snape belonged firmly within that category. Yet, while society wrestled with the complexities of the past, something else was changing. The social foundations of the wars do more than destroy buildings. They destroy assumptions. They challenge traditions. They force entire societies to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves. The Second Wizarding War had done exactly that. By the time the dust settled, the wizarding world looked into the mirror and saw something many people had spent generations avoiding. The real danger had never been Voldemort alone. The real danger was the environment that allowed someone like Voldemort to rise in the first place. His defeat had ended a war. It had not automatically solved the deeper problems beneath it. Those problems would require an entirely different kind of battle, one fought through ideas, through institutions, through culture itself. And slowly, almost invisibly at first, that battle began reshaping magical Britain. For centuries, pureblood supremacy had occupied a powerful position within wizarding society. Not always openly, not always violently, but consistently. Certain families enjoyed privileges others could never access. Certain surnames opened doors automatically. Certain prejudices passed quietly from one generation to the next. Many witches and wizards accepted these realities without questioning them. That acceptance ended after the war. Too many people had witnessed the consequences. Too many lives had been destroyed. Too many families had suffered. The ideology that once seemed untouchable suddenly appeared outdated, embarrassing, dangerous. Young witches and wizards especially rejected it. They had grown up during conflict. They had seen where hatred led. Unlike previous generations, they possessed little patience for old arguments about blood status. The war had exposed those beliefs for what they truly were. Excuses. Nothing more. Within the ministry, changes became increasingly visible. Hiring practices evolved. Promotion systems improved. Opportunities expanded. Merit mattered more than ancestry. Skill mattered more than lineage. Results mattered more than family history. The transformation was not perfect. No society changes overnight, yet the direction was undeniable. The wizarding world was moving forward. Many of the people leading that movement belonged to a single generation, the generation forged during the war. The generation that had fought together at Hogwarts. The generation that refused to inherit old prejudices. Often called the DA generation, they represented something entirely new. They remembered hiding inside the room of requirement, practicing defensive spells, planning resistance, trusting one another regardless of background. Pure blood, half-blood, muggle-born, those labels had meant very little when survival depended on cooperation. Years later, that lesson remained. As members of Dumbledore's army entered adulthood, they carried those values into every profession imaginable: government, education, journalism, business, research, law enforcement. Their influence spread steadily throughout society. Harry Potter transformed the Auror Office. Hermione Granger reshaped legal institutions. Ron Weasley helped build one of the most successful businesses in magical Britain. Neville Longbottom influenced a new generation of students. Luna Lovegood challenged assumptions through journalism and exploration. Countless others contributed in ways both large and small. Individually, their achievements mattered. Collectively, they changed everything. The shift became especially visible at Hogwarts. The school had always reflected the wider wizarding world. As society evolved, Hogwarts evolved too. The curriculum changed. Teaching methods changed. Conversations changed. Students began studying recent history more honestly. Previous generations often treated difficult subjects carefully, sometimes too carefully. Now professors addressed uncomfortable truths directly. The rise of Voldemort. Institutional failures, discrimination, propaganda, the dangers of extremism. Nothing remained hidden. Nothing remained sanitized. Educators understood that ignorance created opportunities for history to repeat itself. Knowledge offered protection. McGonagall supported these changes wholeheartedly. As headmistress, she believed students deserved honesty, not comforting myths, not convenient narratives. The truth. Even when the truth felt uncomfortable. Especially when the truth felt uncomfortable. Muggle studies experienced one of the most dramatic transformations. Once viewed as a niche subject, often dismissed by traditionalists, it became increasingly respected. Students examined Muggle innovations, history, technology, culture, society. Many discovered surprising similarities between magical and non-magical communities. Others developed genuine curiosity. The walls separating the two worlds seemed slightly less rigid than before, not because magical society abandoned its traditions, because it became more confident. Confident enough to learn from others. Confident enough to acknowledge value beyond its own experiences. The changes extended beyond classrooms. Student culture evolved as well. House rivalries remained. They always would. Yet something fundamental shifted. Slytherins no longer carried the same automatic suspicion. Gryffindors no longer claimed moral superiority. Students became more interested in individuals than stereotypes. The war had taught painful lessons about judging people based on labels. Many chose not to repeat those mistakes. The influence of technology created another fascinating development. While magical society remained distinct, curiosity about the Muggle world increased dramatically. Young witches and wizards explored ideas their grandparents might have dismissed entirely. Music, fashion, literature, communication, innovation. Some trends remained temporary. Others left lasting impacts. Traditionalists occasionally complained. Every generation does. The younger generation rarely listened. They saw no contradiction between respecting magical heritage and embracing useful ideas from elsewhere. For them, identity was not a fragile thing requiring constant protection. It was something strong enough to evolve. The media reflected these cultural changes as well. New voices emerged. New publications gained popularity. Journalists became more willing to challenge authority, more willing to investigate uncomfortable subjects, more willing to question powerful institutions. The war had demonstrated the dangers of passive reporting. Many reporters vowed never to repeat those mistakes. Public discourse became healthier as a result. Not always calmer. Certainly not always polite, but healthier. Debate replaced silence. Transparency replaced secrecy. Accountability replaced blind trust. The transformation occasionally felt messy. Progress often does. Meanwhile, international relationships improved. The British wizarding community had spent years focused inward. Recovery created opportunities to reconnect. Educational exchanges expanded. Research partnerships formed. Diplomatic ties strengthened. The wizarding world became slightly smaller, slightly more connected, slightly more cooperative. Everywhere people looked, evidence of change appeared. Some changes felt dramatic, others barely noticeable. Yet together, they created something significant. A new social order. Not perfect. No society ever achieves perfection. But better. Fairer. Stronger. More resilient. Most importantly, the next generation inherited a world fundamentally different from the one their parents fought to protect. Children born after the war grew up hearing stories about Voldemort rather than fearing him. They learned about sacrifice through history lessons rather than personal experience. They viewed peace as normal, not extraordinary. For older generations, that reality felt almost miraculous. Because normality had once seemed impossible. Now it surrounded them. Every school year, every family gathering, every Quidditch match, every ordinary day. Yet beneath these encouraging changes, Another transformation unfolded quietly, a more personal transformation. The heroes of the war were growing older, building careers, starting families, creating lives beyond conflict. For the first time, they faced challenges entirely unrelated to survival. Marriage, parenthood, responsibility, domestic life. And for Harry Potter, Ginny Weasley, Ron Weasley, Hermione Granger, and many others, those challenges would prove every bit as meaningful as anything they faced during the war. Because winning peace and living in peace are two very different things. And the next chapter of their lives would reveal exactly what that difference meant. The war had ended. The Ministry was rebuilding. Hogwarts stood once again beneath the Scottish sky. The wizarding world slowly found its footing. Yet, for the generation that had fought through the darkest years, peace introduced an entirely different challenge: learning how to live. For so long, survival had dictated every decision. Where to hide, who to trust, when to run, how to fight. Now those questions disappeared. In their place came new ones, questions that felt strangely unfamiliar. Where should they live? What kind of future did they want? Could they build families after everything they had endured? Could they truly move forward? For Harry Potter, Ginny Weasley, Ron Weasley, and Hermione Granger, the answers would emerge gradually. Not through dramatic battles, through ordinary moments. The kind of moments they had spent years fighting to protect. One of the first signs of this transition appeared in their relationships. Throughout the war, love had often existed in the shadows, hidden between missions, interrupted by danger, constantly threatened by uncertainty. Now, for the first time, those relationships had room to breathe. Harry and Ginny found themselves navigating a reality neither had experienced before. Time together, actual time. No Horcruxes, no Death Eaters, no looming catastrophe waiting around the corner. At first, the adjustment felt almost strange. Years of crisis had conditioned them to expect disaster. Peace required its own kind of adaptation. Yet gradually they settled into something comfortable, something real, something enduring. The same was true for Ron and Hermione. Their relationship had survived arguments, separations, battles, and near-death experiences. Now they faced challenges far less dramatic, but equally important. Communication, compromise, shared goals, the everyday realities of building a life together. In some ways, those challenges proved harder than fighting dark wizards, because unlike war, ordinary life offered no clear instructions. There was no prophecy to follow, no enemy to defeat, only choices. Thousands of small choices, and every one of them mattered. As the years immediately following the war unfolded, both couples became increasingly protective of their privacy. This surprised many people. The wizarding public remained fascinated by them. Newspapers followed their lives obsessively. Reporters searched constantly for details. Photographers appeared everywhere. Public interest seemed endless. Yet Harry, Ginny, Ron, and Hermione had little desire to become celebrities. They had already lived under public scrutiny. They knew its cost. More importantly, they knew its limits. Fame could never replace genuine happiness. The lives they wanted existed away from headlines, away from public attention, away from constant observation. Their weddings reflected that philosophy perfectly. Many expected grand ceremonies, massive celebrations, events attended by hundreds of guests. Instead, both couples chose something far more intimate, something far more meaningful. Harry and Ginny's wedding took place quietly among family and close friends. No elaborate spectacle, no public invitations, no media access, just the people who mattered most. Those who had shared their journey, those who understood what the moment truly meant. The ceremony felt less like a public event and more like a family gathering, laughter mixed with tears, memories mixed with hope. For those present, it represented far more than a marriage. It represented survival. A future once considered impossible had become reality. Ron and Hermione made a similar choice. Their wedding remained deeply personal, focused on relationships rather than publicity. focused on meaning rather than attention. Many guests later described the ceremony as one of the happiest days they had ever witnessed. Not because it was extravagant, because it felt genuine. The war generation had learned to value authenticity, and nothing felt more authentic than celebrating love with the people who had stood beside you during your darkest moments. Around this same period, another couple quietly influenced everyone around them. Bill and Fleur Weasley. Their home at Shell Cottage became something special in the post-war years. Originally a refuge during difficult times, it gradually transformed into a symbol of what peace could look like. Perched beside the sea, far from political debates and ministry affairs, Shell Cottage offered something increasingly rare: simplicity. The cottage seemed almost untouched by the chaos that had once consumed the wizarding world. Waves rolled onto the shore, sea winds carried familiar scents, sunlight danced across white walls. Life moved at a slower pace. Visitors often found themselves relaxing almost immediately. Harry certainly did. So did Ron and Hermione. Many weekends turned into informal family gatherings. Long conversations stretched into evenings. Children played along the beach. Adults shared stories beneath starlit skies. The atmosphere felt healing, almost magical in a way that had nothing to do with spells. Bill and Fleur demonstrated something important. Happiness did not require fame, or power, or recognition. Sometimes happiness looked like a quiet home beside the sea. That lesson influenced many of their friends, particularly Harry, who had spent most of his life searching for a place to belong. Shell Cottage showed him what belonging could actually feel like, not as an idea, as a reality. As these years passed, another remarkable development occurred. The next generation began arriving. Children, new life, new beginnings. Perhaps no event symbolized the future more clearly. The first major arrival came with the birth of Victoire Weasley. Bill and Fleur's daughter entered the world on a date that carried extraordinary significance. May 2nd, the anniversary of the Battle of Hogwarts, exactly 1 year after the victory that changed everything. Many people viewed the timing as symbolic, a reminder that life continues, a reminder that hope survives, a reminder that even after tremendous loss, new beginnings remain possible. Victoire quickly became a beloved presence within the extended family, the first child of the new generation, the first glimpse of a future untouched by war. Her arrival changed something in everyone, especially the older generation. Suddenly, conversations about rebuilding became personal. The future was not abstract anymore. It had a face, a smile, a laugh, a name. Soon more children followed. The wizarding world entered a genuine baby boom, not just among famous families, everywhere. After years of fear and uncertainty, people finally felt comfortable planning long-term futures again. Families expanded. Communities grew. Schools prepared for larger incoming classes. The atmosphere changed. Optimism replaced anxiety. For Harry and Ginny, the arrival of children transformed everything. Careers remained important. Responsibilities remained important. Yet parenthood introduced a completely different perspective. Suddenly, every decision involved someone else. Every choice affected the future of a child. The same proved true for Ron and Hermione. Their lives remained busy, demanding, complicated. Yet family became the center around which everything else revolved. It was not always easy. Parenthood rarely is. There were sleepless nights, unexpected challenges, moments of doubt, moments of exhaustion, but there was also joy. Profound joy, the kind that arrives unexpectedly. A first laugh, a first word, a first broomstick flight. The generation that had once fought for survival now found themselves helping children learn how to walk. The contrast felt remarkable. Years earlier, they had carried the weight of a war. Now they carried toddlers. In many ways, that transformation represented the true victory, not Voldemort's defeat. The ability to build ordinary lives afterward, because ordinary life was always the goal. The dream, the reward. As the first decade after the war progressed, the scars of conflict remained visible, but they no longer defined everything. New memories formed, new traditions emerged, new stories began. The wizarding world was no longer living in the shadow of war. It was living in the promise of tomorrow. Yet while families grew and children filled homes with laughter, one young man carried a unique burden. A child who represented both loss and hope. A child whose life connected the past and future more directly than anyone else. His name was Teddy Lupin, and his story would become one of the most important legacies left behind by the war. By the time the first decade after the war began drawing to a close, a new generation had emerged. A generation unlike any that came before it. These children had never hidden from Death Eaters. They had never lived beneath the shadow of Voldemort. They had never watched the Ministry collapse or heard whispers of war around every corner. For them, peace was normal. And for the adults who had survived the darkest years of magical history, that simple fact felt extraordinary. Every laugh, every school holiday, every family gathering, each ordinary moment served as a reminder of what had been fought for. No child represented that reality more clearly than Teddy Lupin. Born during the final days of the war, Teddy entered a world that had already taken everything. Teddy's story could have become a tragedy. Instead, it became something else entirely. A story about family. A story about love. A story about belonging. From the very beginning, Teddy found himself surrounded by people determined to ensure he never felt alone. Harry Potter became one of the most important figures in his life. As Teddy's godfather, Harry took the responsibility seriously. Perhaps more seriously than anyone expected. After all, Harry understood orphanhood better than most. He knew exactly what it felt like to grow up without parents. He understood the questions, the loneliness, the curiosity, the endless wondering about people you barely remembered, because he had lived it. That shared experience created a unique connection between them. Harry was not trying to replace Remus Lupin. Nobody could. Instead, he became something equally important. A guide. A protector. A constant presence. Throughout Teddy's childhood, Harry remained there. Birthdays, holidays, school milestones, family gatherings. The relationship deepened naturally, not through obligation, through genuine affection. As Teddy grew older, people began noticing familiar traits. His hair changed colors constantly. Sometimes blue, sometimes red, sometimes bright green for absolutely no reason. The inherited gift of metamorphomagus abilities made him impossible to ignore. Tonks would have loved it. Everyone agreed on that. His personality reflected both parents in fascinating ways. There was Remus's kindness, Tonks' energy, Remus's intelligence, Tonks' unpredictability. At times, it almost felt as though pieces of both survived through him. Perhaps they did. Yet one person played an even larger role in shaping Teddy's life. Andromeda Tonks, his grandmother. Following the war, Andromeda faced a devastating reality. Within a relatively short period, she lost her husband, lost her daughter, lost her son-in-law. Entire branches of her life disappeared almost overnight. Many people would have collapsed beneath such grief. Andromeda endured, because Teddy needed her. That simple fact gave her purpose, direction, strength. She dedicated herself to raising her grandson, creating stability, providing love, building a home. Her quiet resilience became legendary among those who knew her. While others received recognition for battlefield heroics, Andromeda performed a different kind of heroism, the daily kind, the sustained kind, the kind that rarely appears in newspapers. Day after day, year after year, she remained there. For Teddy, that mattered more than any headline ever could. As Teddy grew, he gradually became part of a much larger family network. The Potters, the Weasleys, friends of Remus and Tonks, former members of the Order, people who loved his parents. The result was extraordinary. Instead of growing up isolated, Teddy grew up surrounded by support. Dozens of people considered him family, dozens more considered him important. The war generation made an unspoken promise. No child would face the loneliness they once faced, not if they could help it. Teddy benefited directly from that promise. But he was not alone. Across magical Britain, countless children grew up during this new era. Children of heroes, children of survivors. Children born after the war. Each carried a unique relationship with history. For many, stories about Voldemort sounded almost unbelievable, like legends, like ancient history. Parents occasionally found themselves smiling at that reaction, because for them, those events still felt recent. Painfully recent. Yet that distance represented progress. The further the war moved into history, the safer society became. The children themselves reflected that change. They approached life differently, with confidence, with curiosity, without constant fear. James Sirius Potter embodied much of that spirit. Harry and Ginny's eldest son inherited remarkable energy, remarkable confidence, and an almost alarming enthusiasm for adventure. Teachers often compared him to his grandfather James Potter. The resemblance extended beyond appearance. James approached life at full speed. Every challenge looked exciting. Every rule looked negotiable. His parents quickly realized he possessed a talent for mischief, one that seemed entirely natural. Rose Granger Weasley developed very differently. Thoughtful, intelligent, organized. She inherited many of Hermione's strengths and several of Ron's as well. Family debates became considerably more complicated once Rose learned how to participate. Adults occasionally forgot how young she was. Her questions tended to expose weaknesses in arguments surprisingly quickly. The next generation continued expanding. Children filled family gatherings, filled gardens, filled train stations, filled Hogwarts admissions records. The sounds of childhood replaced memories of war, and nowhere was that transformation more visible than during holidays at the Burrow. The Burrow had changed, not physically, emotionally. Years earlier, it served as a resistance headquarters, a refuge, a place of planning and preparation. Now it served a different purpose, a place of celebration. Children raced through fields. Brooms filled the air. Laughter echoed from room to room. The atmosphere felt completely different, yet the past never disappeared entirely. Photographs remained on walls. Stories continued being told. Memories stayed alive. The difference was that those memories no longer dominated everything. They existed alongside new ones, healthier ones, future-focused ones. That balance mattered. Because remembrance and growth are not enemies, they can coexist. The war generation gradually learned that lesson. Perhaps the most remarkable development involved how little the children cared about old divisions. Blood status meant almost nothing to them. House rivalries felt playful rather than serious. Ancient prejudices seemed outdated. Many could not understand why previous generations had been so obsessed with such things. Their confusion delighted parents, because it suggested real progress, not superficial change. Genuine change, the kind that survives because younger generations embrace it naturally. As Teddy Lupin entered adolescence, he became increasingly aware of the role he occupied within this new world. Not quite a Potter, not quite a Weasley, yet somehow connected to all of them. He carried his parents' legacy, but he also carried something larger. Proof that loss did not have the final word. Proof that love could outlast tragedy. Proof that families could be built rather than merely inherited. And as the years moved steadily toward the famous September morning waiting in the future, another family was confronting its own complicated relationship with the past. A family once synonymous with fear, power, privilege, and pure blood supremacy. The Malfoys. Because while the wizarding world rebuilt itself around ideals of unity and progress, Draco Malfoy faced a difficult question. Could a family whose name represented so much darkness ever truly find redemption? The answer would shape not only his future, but the future of his son as well. The war had changed everyone. Some people rebuilt careers, others rebuilt families, some rebuilt entire institutions. But for the Malfoy family, the challenge was different. They had to rebuild their name, and in many ways that proved far more difficult. For generations, the name Malfoy had carried enormous influence throughout the wizarding world. Power, wealth, prestige, connections. The family occupied a position near the very top of magical society. Doors opened automatically. Opinions carried weight. Opportunities appeared effortlessly. Then came the war, and everything changed. When Voldemort fell, the Malfoys discovered something uncomfortable. Influence built on fear disappears very quickly when fear disappears. Their reputation collapsed almost overnight. Many former allies vanished. Social invitations stopped arriving. Business relationships weakened. Public opinion turned hostile. The family found itself isolated in a way it had never experienced before. For Lucius Malfoy, the fall proved especially difficult. He had spent most of his life believing influence and status represented success. Now both had evaporated. The once proud patriarch retreated from public life almost entirely, rarely appearing in Diagon Alley, rarely attending public events, rarely speaking to anyone outside a small circle of acquaintances. The war had broken something inside him, not dramatically, quietly, the kind of break that changes a person forever. Visitors occasionally described Malfoy Manor as feeling different during those years. The grand halls remained impressive, the wealth remained visible, the luxury remained intact. Yet something had vanished. Confidence. The manor no longer felt like the headquarters of an influential dynasty. It felt like a monument to a fading era. Draco Malfoy understood this better than anyone. Unlike his father, he had witnessed the final months of Voldemort's rule from close range. He had seen fear behind the illusion of power. He had watched the Dark Lord occupy his home. Had watched adults who once seemed invincible become terrified. Had watched his family's carefully constructed world collapse around them. The experience changed him profoundly. Not overnight. Transformation rarely happens that way. But gradually. Steadily. Inevitably. The arrogance that once defined him began fading. The certainty disappeared. The simplistic worldview inherited from childhood no longer made sense. Reality had challenged it too thoroughly. Draco spent years wrestling with those lessons. Some people expected dramatic public apologies. Others demanded visible acts of redemption. Life proved more complicated than that. True change often happens quietly, away from attention, away from applause, away from public approval. For Draco, that process began with distance. Distance from old ideologies, distance from old expectations, distance from the version of himself that had nearly destroyed everything. A major turning point arrived through Astoria Greengrass. Their relationship surprised many observers. Both came from traditional pure-blood families. Many assumed their marriage would reinforce old customs. The opposite happened. Astoria possessed little interest in preserving outdated beliefs. She viewed blood purity ideology as destructive, short-sighted, dangerous. The war had confirmed those conclusions. Conversations between her and Draco often centered around the future, not the past. The question was not how to preserve old traditions. The question was how to avoid repeating old mistakes. That shared perspective became the foundation of their marriage. Their wedding reflected those values. Far quieter than many expected. Far less political. Far less performative. It represented a deliberate departure from the culture that once defined both families. The couple focused on building something new, not restoring something old. Life at Malfoy Manor slowly changed. The transformation was not dramatic. No single moment symbolized it. Instead, countless small decisions accumulated over time. Certain visitors stopped receiving invitations. Certain conversations disappeared. Certain traditions quietly ended. The atmosphere softened. The manor remained elegant, remained historic, remained unmistakably Malfoy. Yet it no longer felt like a fortress guarding outdated ideas. It felt like a home. Years later, the birth of Scorpius Malfoy accelerated that transformation. Parenthood often forces people to reevaluate priorities. Draco was no exception. Holding his son for the first time changed everything. Suddenly, the future mattered more than legacy. Character mattered more than reputation. Values mattered more than appearances. He knew exactly what kind of childhood he did not want Scorpius to experience. Not one shaped by prejudice. Not one defined by superiority. Not one built on fear. The cycle had to end somewhere. Draco decided it would end with him. Scorpius grew up in a remarkably different environment than his father had. The contrast became obvious almost immediately. Where Draco had inherited expectations, Scorpius inherited possibilities. Where Draco had been taught division, Scorpius learned curiosity. Where Draco once viewed certain people as enemies, Scorpius learned to evaluate individuals on their own merits. The differences mattered enormously. As Scorpius grew older, many people noticed something unexpected. He possessed little resemblance to the stereotype associated with the Malfoy name. He was thoughtful, polite, intelligent, often surprisingly kind. These qualities confused some observers. Others viewed them as evidence that genuine change had occurred. Perhaps both interpretations contained truth. Public perception of the Malfoys evolved slowly. Very slowly. Trust damaged over generations cannot be repaired in a few years. Many people remained skeptical. Some never changed their opinions at all. Draco accepted that reality. He understood why. Actions have consequences. History leaves scars. No one owed him forgiveness. No one owed his family acceptance. All he could do was move forward honestly. And so he did. Unlike some former supporters of Voldemort, Draco never attempted to rewrite history. Never claimed innocence. Never pretended mistakes had not happened. That honesty earned respect in unexpected places. Not admiration. Respect. There is a difference. Even Harry Potter eventually recognized the transformation. The relationship between Harry and Draco never became friendship. At least not in the traditional sense. Too much history existed between them. Too many memories. Too many wounds. Yet hostility gradually faded. Mutual understanding replaced it. Both men matured. Both became fathers. Both carried responsibilities larger than themselves. Life pushed them forward. The rivalry that once dominated their school years became increasingly irrelevant. The next generation accelerated that process. Children often succeed where adults fail. Scorpius Malfoy entered a world very different from the one his father inherited. A world shaped by peace. World shaped by reform. World shaped by people determined not to repeat history. He would eventually meet children carrying names just as famous as his own. Potters, Weasleys, Longbottoms, and unlike previous generations, they would have opportunities to define themselves independently of the conflicts that shaped their parents. That possibility represented real progress. Not perfection, progress. The kind earned through effort, through reflection, through difficult choices. For Draco Malfoy, redemption never arrived as a single moment. It arrived through years of quiet decisions, years of choosing a different path, years of building rather than dividing, years of ensuring his son inherited a better future than he did. And perhaps that was enough, because redemption is rarely about erasing the past. It is about refusing to repeat it. As the years continued passing, children born after the war grew older, families expanded, careers flourished, communities strengthened. The wounds of conflict gradually faded into history. Yet one place remained at the center of everything, a place where every story eventually converged. Platform 9 3/4. Because a particular September morning was approaching, a morning that would bring together the children of heroes, survivors, and former enemies alike. A morning that would reveal just how much the wizarding world had changed, and how much of its future now belonged to a new generation. 19 years. That was the distance between victory and this moment. 19 years since the Battle of Hogwarts. 19 years since Voldemort's defeat. 19 years since a generation of frightened teenagers stood among the ruins of a castle and wondered if peace would ever truly feel real. Now, on a cool September morning in 2017, the answer stood before them. It arrived carrying trunks, owls, school robes, and nervous excitement. Platform 9 3/4 buzzed with life. Steam drifted from the Scarlet Hogwarts Express. Parents guided luggage carts through crowds. Students laughed nervously. Owls hooted from cages. Cats peeked from travel baskets. The scene looked remarkably familiar, almost unchanged. Yet for those who remembered the war, everything felt different. because this generation had never known fear the way their parents had. The platform itself seemed suspended between two worlds, the past and the future, the generation that fought, and the generation that would inherit what they built. Harry Potter stood beside his family, watching the crowds move around them. Time had changed him, not dramatically, not in ways strangers would immediately notice. The lightning-shaped scar remained. The glasses remained. The familiar expression of quiet thoughtfulness remained. Yet the boy who once arrived at this station feeling lost and alone no longer existed. In his place stood a husband, a father, a leader, a man who had spent nearly 2 decades helping rebuild the wizarding world. Beside him stood Ginny, still confident, still sharp-witted, still carrying the same determination that once made her one of Hogwarts' fiercest students. Their lives had become busy, complicated, full of responsibilities. Yet moments like this reminded them how far they had come. Nearby, James Sirius Potter moved through the crowd with the confidence of someone who had already experienced Hogwarts. As a returning student, he seemed entirely comfortable, perhaps too comfortable. His grin appeared suspiciously familiar. Harry had seen that exact grin before, on his father, on Sirius Black, on Fred and George Weasley. History, it seemed, had a sense of humor. James carried himself with the effortless confidence of someone who viewed the world as an adventure waiting to happen. Rules rarely impressed him. Limits rarely discouraged him. Teachers would undoubtedly have stories to tell before long. Harry already felt sympathy for them. Yet the focus of the morning was not James. It was his younger brother, Albus Severus Potter. Unlike James, Albus looked nervous. Very nervous. He stood close to his parents while glancing repeatedly toward the train. His excitement fought constantly with uncertainty. The transition felt enormous. A new school, new friendships, new expectations. Now he watched his son confronting them for the first time. Albus finally voiced the concern that had been troubling him. What if I am sorted into Slytherin? The question hung in the air. To younger generations, it might have sounded simple. To older generations, it carried decades of history. Old fears, old stereotypes, old wounds. Harry looked at his son carefully. The answer mattered. Not because of Hogwarts, because of what it represented. Years earlier, many people would have treated the possibility as a disaster. The post-war world viewed it differently. Harry knelt slightly so they stood eye to eye. Then he shared the truth. The truth he had learned through experience. The truth shaped by war, loss, forgiveness, and understanding. You were named after 2 headmasters of Hogwarts. Albus listened carefully. One of them was a Slytherin. The boy blinked. Harry smiled gently. And he was one of the bravest men I ever knew. The words carried extraordinary weight, not because they discussed house placement, because they represented everything the new generation needed to understand. Character mattered more than labels. Always. The old divisions had caused enough damage. It was time for something better. Nearby, another child prepared for Hogwarts. Rose Granger Weasley, the daughter of Ron and Hermione. Anyone observing her immediately noticed similarities to both parents. Her intelligence seemed unmistakable, her confidence equally obvious. Rose approached the journey differently than Albus. Where he worried, she prepared. Where he hesitated, she analyzed. She carried herself with quiet assurance, the kind developed through years of encouragement and curiosity. Ron occasionally joked that she inherited all of Hermione's intelligence and none of his common sense. Hermione disagreed. Rose inherited both, fortunately. The station continued filling with familiar faces. Neville Longbottom appeared among the crowd. Now one of Hogwarts' most respected professors. Students greeted him enthusiastically. Many viewed him as a hero. Others simply viewed him as an excellent teacher. Neville preferred the second description. Luna Lovegood moved through the platform with her usual calm confidence. Completely unchanged in the ways that mattered. Completely unique. Completely unique. The years had not altered her perspective, only expanded it. Even Draco Malfoy stood nearby. a sight that would have seemed impossible 19 years earlier. The years had changed him too. The arrogance of youth replaced by quiet reflection. Beside him stood his son, Scorpius Malfoy, one of the most interesting members of the new generation. Unlike the expectations attached to the Malfoy name, Scorpius possessed a thoughtful nature, a gentle curiosity, a genuine desire to connect with others. Many people expected him to resemble his father. Few anticipated how different he would become. The contrast represented something important, proof that history influences people, but does not imprison them. As families gathered together, the platform revealed the true legacy of the post-war era. Not laws, not institutions, not political reforms. Children of heroes, children of survivors, children of former enemies, standing together, preparing to share classrooms, dormitories, friendships, experiences. The previous generation had inherited division. This generation inherited possibility. That difference mattered. Perhaps more than anything else, steam continued rising from the Hogwarts Express. Conductors called final boarding announcements. Parents exchanged last-minute advice. Students hurried toward train doors. Excitement intensified. The familiar ritual repeated itself once again. Yet this time it carried deeper meaning. The war generation watched their children board the same train they once boarded. Walk the same path. Begin the same journey, but under entirely different circumstances. No prophecy awaited them. No dark lord hunted them. No war overshadowed their future. The sacrifices had meant something. This was the proof. One by one, students climbed aboard. James, Rose, Scorpius, Albus, countless others, each carrying dreams, questions, possibilities. The train whistle sounded, a familiar sound, a timeless sound. Slowly, the Hogwarts Express began moving. Parents waved. Children leaned from windows. Voices echoed across the platform. The distance gradually increased, until finally the train disappeared around a bend. And just like that, another generation's story began. Harry stood quietly watching the empty tracks. For a brief moment, memories returned. His own first journey, his own fears, his own hopes. Then he looked around, at Ginny, at friends, at family, at the world they had helped build. The future no longer belonged to them. And that was exactly as it should be. The next generation had arrived. The age of survival was over. The age of possibility had begun. History rarely knows what to do with heroes. Sometimes it turns them into myths. Sometimes it reduces them to symbols. Sometimes it forgets the details entirely and remembers only the headlines. Yet the generation that defeated Voldemort presented a unique challenge, because they never wanted to become legends. They simply wanted to survive. And somehow, through courage, sacrifice, and a remarkable amount of luck, they changed the wizarding world forever. By the time the children of the post-war generation began attending Hogwarts, Harry Potter, Ron Weasley, and Hermione Granger had become something unusual. Living history. Not statues, not portraits, not names in textbooks. Living history. An entire generation had grown up hearing stories about them. Students studied their actions in classrooms. Writers analyzed their decisions. Historians debated their impact. Yet the people at the center of those stories remained surprisingly ordinary, at least in their own minds. Harry never became comfortable with fame. Despite decades passing since Voldemort's defeat, public attention never fully disappeared. Wherever he traveled, people recognized him. Children pointed. Adults whispered. Visitors occasionally stared. The attention remained polite, often affectionate, but it never vanished. Harry learned to accept it. Acceptance, however, was not the same as enjoyment. He preferred work, responsibility, purpose. Things that felt tangible, things that felt real. By now, his leadership within the Auror office had become widely respected. Years of reform transformed the department into one of the most trusted institutions in magical Britain. Young Aurors viewed Harry as a role model. Veteran officers respected his judgment. International magical governments frequently consulted him on major security matters, yet the qualities people admired most had little to do with his fame. They admired consistency, integrity, humility. Harry never behaved like someone who believed himself more important than others. Perhaps because he understood how fragile life truly was. The war taught that lesson repeatedly. As head Auror, he focused heavily on prevention rather than reaction. Dark magic still existed. Dangerous artifacts still surfaced occasionally. Criminal organizations still operated. The difference was preparation. The wizarding world no longer waited for crises to become disasters. Lessons had been learned. Hard lessons. Expensive lessons. But lessons nonetheless. Meanwhile, Ron Weasley followed a different path. After several successful years within the Auror office, he eventually realized something important. His future lay elsewhere. The decision surprised some observers. Ron had performed exceptionally well. His instincts remained excellent. His record remained impressive. Yet he understood himself better than most people realized. Law enforcement had been meaningful, but it was not where his heart truly belonged. Family drew him elsewhere. So did business. George Weasley welcomed the transition enthusiastically. Weasley's Wizard Wheezes continued expanding years after Fred's death. The company had grown beyond anyone's expectations. What began as a joke shop evolved into one of the most successful businesses in magical Britain. Its products appeared everywhere. Its reputation remained unmatched. Its influence continued expanding. George had carried the company forward alone for years. Now Ron joined him. The partnership worked beautifully. Ron brought practical thinking. George brought creativity. Together they balanced one another effectively. The business entered an entirely new phase of growth. Many customers viewed the company as more than a commercial success. It represented resilience. Proof that joy could survive tragedy. Proof that laughter remained powerful. Perhaps Fred would have appreciated that most of all. Hermione Granger's journey unfolded differently. By now, her influence extended throughout multiple layers of government. What began as advocacy evolved into leadership. What began as reform evolved into transformation. Her rise within the ministry appeared inevitable in retrospect. Yet those who worked alongside her understood how much effort stood behind every achievement. Nothing happened automatically. Nothing arrived easily. Hermione earned every promotion, every responsibility, every opportunity. Through intelligence, through persistence, through extraordinary dedication. Over time, she became one of the most influential voices in magical governance. Policies changed because of her. Institutions improved because of her. Opportunities expanded because of her. The impact stretched far beyond legislation. Young witches viewed her as proof that expertise mattered, that preparation mattered, that determination mattered. Her example inspired countless careers. Perhaps more importantly, it inspired confidence. The belief that meaningful change remained possible. Together, Harry, Ron and Hermione formed something unique, not because they remained inseparable. Life rarely works that way. Careers created distance. Families created responsibilities. Time created change, yet their bond endured. Some friendships survive because people remain together constantly. Others survive because they become permanent. Theirs belong to the second category. No amount of time could erase what they experienced together. No amount of success could replace those memories. Every reunion felt effortless. Every conversation resumed naturally. The years disappeared almost immediately, as if no time had passed at all. The wizarding public remained fascinated by their friendship. Documentaries explored it. Books analyzed it. Journalists discussed it endlessly. Everyone wanted to understand what made the partnership so effective. The answer often seemed disappointingly simple. Trust. Complete trust. The kind built through shared hardship, shared danger, shared survival. The kind that cannot be manufactured, only earned. As the decades progressed, historians began examining the war generation more seriously. Early accounts often focused on dramatic events. The Battle of Hogwarts, the Horcrux hunt, Voldemort's downfall. Over time, scholars recognized a broader story. The real achievement was not winning the war. The real achievement was winning the peace. Wars end every day. Building something better afterward is much harder. The generation that defeated Voldemort accomplished both. They rebuilt institutions, reformed laws, strengthened communities, created opportunities, protected freedoms. The work lasted decades, and unlike the battles, it happened largely outside public attention. History eventually acknowledged that fact. Academic studies expanded. New perspectives emerged. Researchers examined not just the conflict itself, but the recovery that followed. The findings proved remarkably consistent. The post-war generation transformed magical Britain more completely than any generation in centuries. Not through conquest, through reconstruction. That distinction mattered enormously. Even Hogwarts reflected their legacy. Students walked corridors shaped by their sacrifices, studied reforms created by their efforts, benefited from opportunities their generation fought to protect. Many children knew the names Harry Potter, Ron Weasley, and Hermione Granger long before arriving at school. Yet teachers encouraged a more nuanced understanding, not legends. People. Young people who made difficult choices under impossible circumstances. Young people who succeeded despite fear. Young people who failed sometimes, who argued, who doubted themselves, who kept moving forward anyway. The truth proved far more inspiring than mythology, because myths feel unreachable. People feel relatable. As the years passed, the Golden Trio became increasingly comfortable, allowing history to tell its story. They no longer felt compelled to explain everything, defend everything, correct every misunderstanding. New generations would interpret events through their own perspectives. That was natural. That was healthy. The world belonged to them now. Yet one thing remained undeniable. The wizarding world that existed today looked dramatically different from the one Harry entered as an 11-year-old boy. Safer, fairer, more connected, more resilient. Not perfect, never perfect, but better, much better. And the people most responsible for that transformation never sought power for its own sake. They sought a future where children could grow up without fear, a future where families could live ordinary lives, a future where peace felt normal. Looking around the wizarding world they helped create, it became increasingly clear. They had succeeded. Yet while history celebrated famous names and public achievements, another story quietly unfolded in the background. The story of those who never appeared on posters, never dominated headlines, never became symbols. The teachers, the healers, the shopkeepers, the parents, the ordinary people who rebuilt society one day at a time. Because no victory belongs to heroes alone, and the final chapter of this story belongs to them. History remembers names. It remembers battles. It remembers dramatic moments that seem to define entire eras. But history often overlooks the people who make recovery possible. The people who arrive after the fighting ends. The people who rebuild walls, restore communities, heal wounds, raise children, continue living. The wizarding world celebrated Harry Potter. It honored Hermione Granger. It remembered Ron Weasley and countless others who stood against Voldemort. And rightly so, their courage changed history. Yet victory belonged to far more people than the famous names recorded in textbooks. Because when the war ended, an entirely different army went to work. An army of ordinary witches and wizards. And without them, peace would never have survived. The first heroes of reconstruction appeared inside St. Mungo's hospital. Throughout the war, healers faced unimaginable pressure. Patients arrived constantly. Victims of curses. Victims of torture. Victims of battles. Victims of fear. Many healers worked exhausting shifts that stretched far beyond normal limits. They treated injuries few textbooks prepared them for. Some witnessed suffering that remained with them for years. Yet when the war ended, their work became even more important. Because physical injuries represented only part of the damage. Thousands of survivors carried invisible wounds, nightmares, anxiety, grief, survivor's guilt, trauma. Magic could repair broken bones. It could not automatically repair broken hearts. The healers understood that. Many devoted years helping survivors learn how to live again. Patient by patient, conversation by conversation, day after day. Most never received awards. Most never appeared in newspapers. Yet their impact touched countless lives. Parents reunited with children because of them. Families recovered because of them. Communities healed because of them. Their contribution cannot be measured easily, but it can be felt everywhere. Teachers became another vital force. The Battle of Hogwarts had transformed education forever. Students returned carrying memories previous generations never experienced. Some had fought in the war, others lost family members. Many struggled to focus on ordinary schoolwork after witnessing extraordinary events. Teaching suddenly involved much more than lessons. It involved healing, understanding, guidance. Professor McGonagall recognized this immediately. As headmistress, she encouraged patience, compassion, flexibility. Students needed stability. The staff provided it. Teachers across Hogwarts quietly became counselors, mentors, and protectors. They helped rebuild confidence, restore routines, create a sense of normality. A classroom may seem ordinary, yet after years of fear, ordinary things become extraordinary. Every lesson taught, every exam completed, every student who graduated represented progress. The next generation moved forward because educators refused to give up. The same could be said for shopkeepers. For years, Diagon Alley had existed beneath a cloud of uncertainty. Businesses closed. Customers disappeared. Fear reduced entire streets to shadows of their former selves. When peace returned, merchants faced difficult decisions. Should they reopen? Should they rebuild? Could they risk investing again? Many chose yes, despite losses. Despite uncertainty, despite financial challenges, one shop reopened. Then another. Then another. Slowly, the alley came back to life. The sounds returned first. Conversations, laughter, bargaining, children excitedly examining school supplies. The atmosphere changed. Hope returned through commerce. People rarely think of business owners as heroes, yet communities depend on them. They create opportunities, provide stability, restore confidence. Every reopened storefront sent a message. The future exists. Invest in it. Believe in it. Move toward it. Ministry employees played a similar role. Much attention focused on Kingsley Shacklebolt and high-profile reforms. Far less attention focused on the thousands of workers responsible for implementing those reforms. Clerks, investigators, administrators, researchers, analysts. The people behind the scenes, the people whose names rarely appeared anywhere. Every new policy required effort. Every reform required management. Every improvement required someone willing to do the work. They did. Without recognition, without celebration, because they believed the wizarding world deserved better. Many had witnessed the ministry's collapse firsthand. They understood the consequences of complacency. The new generation of public servants approached their responsibilities differently, more carefully, more transparently, more thoughtfully. The result was a stronger government, not because leaders changed, because thousands of ordinary employees changed with them. Throughout magical Britain, urban districts stabilized. The process looked different everywhere, yet the principle remained the same. Recovery happens together, never alone. One of the most remarkable examples emerged through orphan support programs. The war left many children without parents. Some lost one parent. Others lost both. The situation threatened to create a generation defined by loss. Instead, communities intervened. Families opened homes. Organizations provided assistance. Mentors stepped forward. Support networks expanded rapidly. The wizarding world remembered its own history. Remembered what happened when vulnerable children lacked guidance. Many people refused to repeat those mistakes. Their efforts changed lives. Perhaps thousands of lives. Some heroes worked in places nobody expected. Owl handlers restored communication networks disrupted during the conflict. Transportation workers repaired damaged infrastructure. Magical architects reconstructed historic buildings. Researchers developed improved protective enchantments. Curse breakers secured dangerous sites abandoned during the war. Every profession contributed something. Every profession mattered. Recovery requires specialists. It also requires ordinary people doing ordinary jobs extraordinarily well. That truth became increasingly obvious as the years passed. Even journalism evolved. The Daily Prophet spent years rebuilding public trust. Its failures during the rise of Voldemort remained impossible to ignore. Editors confronted difficult questions. Reporters re-evaluated priorities. Standards improved. Investigative journalism expanded. The paper slowly transformed from a source of official narratives into a source of genuine information. That transition strengthened democracy itself. Informed citizens make better decisions. The war had demonstrated the consequences of misinformation. Many journalists dedicated their careers to ensuring those mistakes never happened again. Families deserve recognition too. Perhaps more than anyone, parents spent years helping children process fears they barely understood themselves. Grandparents preserved memories. Siblings supported one another. Homes became places of recovery, places of safety, places where healing happened quietly. Most acts of love leave no historical record, yet societies depend upon them completely. A single bedtime story, a comforting conversation, a shared meal. These moments rarely attract attention. They shape lives nonetheless. As historians examined the post-war era, many reached the same conclusion. The rebuilding of magical Britain succeeded because ordinary people refused to surrender hope. Not because they were famous, not because they were powerful, because they were committed. They showed up, every day, for years. Sometimes progress looked dramatic. Often it looked boring, a repaired building, a reopened business, a child succeeding in school, a family celebrating a birthday. History tends to overlook such moments, yet those moments represent the true purpose of peace. The ability to live, the ability to plan, the ability to dream. The heroes of the war created that possibility. The unsung heroes protected it. Together, they built something remarkable. A society stronger than the one that existed before. A society capable of learning from its mistakes. A society willing to move forward without forgetting where it came from. And as the decades continued passing, the generation that rebuilt the wizarding world slowly began realizing something profound. Their work was complete. The future no longer depended on them. It belonged to those who came after. The children boarding the Hogwarts Express. The young Aurors entering training. The new teachers standing before classrooms. The next generation was ready, and with that realization came the final lesson of all. Every generation inherits a world. Every generation leaves one behind. The true measure of success is whether the world you leave is better than the one you inherited. For the generation that survived Voldemort, the answer was becoming increasingly clear. They had done exactly that. Yet one final chapter remains, the chapter that asks the biggest question of all. What, ultimately, was the true legacy of Harry Potter and the generation that changed the wizarding world forever? History often asks simple questions. Who won? Who lost? Who changed the world? Yet the most important questions are rarely simple, especially when discussing Harry Potter. For decades after the Second Wizarding War, historians attempted to define his legacy. Books were written, studies were published, documentaries were produced. Entire academic careers emerged around the topic. Everyone seemed eager to answer the same question. What was Harry Potter's greatest achievement? At first, the answer appeared obvious. He defeated Voldemort, the most feared dark wizard of the modern age. The wizard responsible for 2 wars. The wizard whose name once terrified an entire society. On the surface, no accomplishment seemed greater. Yet the deeper historians looked, the more complicated the answer became. Because defeating Voldemort ended a war, it did not explain everything that followed. The true significance of Harry Potter's generation extended far beyond a single battle. far beyond a single victory, far beyond a single person. The Battle of Hogwarts remains one of the most studied events in magical history, and understandably so. It represented the climax of decades of conflict, the final confrontation between opposing visions of the future, the moment when fear and hope collided. The battle itself lasted only hours. Its consequences lasted generations. Yet even there, an important truth often gets overlooked. Harry Potter did not stand alone. He never did. Popular stories love individual heroes. Reality rarely works that way. The victory belonged to hundreds of people. Students, teachers, parents, aurors, order members, ordinary citizens. Every person who resisted. Every person who refused to surrender. Every person who chose courage over fear. Without them, Harry's story ends differently. Much differently. The older Harry became, the more openly he acknowledged this reality. Whenever interviewers attempted to place him at the center of everything, he redirected attention elsewhere. Toward Neville Longbottom, toward Hermione Granger, toward Ron Weasley, toward countless others. Some journalists found this frustrating. The public preferred simple narratives. Harry preferred truthful ones, and the truth was simple. No one wins a war alone. That perspective influenced how future generations understood the conflict. Gradually, educational institutions moved away from hero worship. Students learned about cooperation, collective sacrifice, shared responsibility, the broader movement rather than individual mythology. The result produced a healthier understanding of history, one grounded in reality, not legend. As scholars continued examining the post-war era, another conclusion emerged. The greatest achievement of Harry's generation was not defeating darkness, it was preventing darkness from returning. That distinction mattered enormously. History contains many victories, far fewer lasting victories. Again and again, societies defeat dangerous movements only to recreate the conditions that produced them. The wizarding world avoided that trap. Not perfectly. No society ever achieves perfection, but successfully. The reforms introduced after the war addressed deeper issues: prejudice, corruption, institutional failure, complacency. The problems Voldemort exploited no longer enjoyed the same fertile ground. Future extremists face stronger resistance, stronger institutions, a more informed public. That was not accidental, it was the result of deliberate effort. Years of deliberate effort. Years of deliberate effort. Historians increasingly refer to this period as the Great Reconstruction, a phrase borrowed from Muggle history. The comparison felt appropriate. The generation that survived the war rebuilt nearly every major institution in magical Britain: the Ministry, Hogwarts, law enforcement, education, public trust. Each required attention. Each required sacrifice. Each required leadership. Harry contributed significantly, but so did many others. The story remained collective, always collective. One particularly fascinating aspect of Harry's legacy involved his relationship with power. Many heroes eventually become rulers. Many revolutionaries become politicians. Many saviors become authority figures. Harry largely avoided that path. Despite immense popularity, he never pursued the highest political offices. He never sought control over society. He never attempted to transform personal influence into political dominance. Historians frequently discuss this choice. Some argue it demonstrated wisdom. Others argue it reflected personal preference. Most agree it shaped public perception dramatically. Harry became a symbol of service rather than authority, a protector rather than a ruler, a guardian rather than a governor. The distinction helped preserve public trust. People believed his motives because he repeatedly rejected opportunities for personal power. That pattern appeared throughout his life. Again and again. The Elder Wand. Political office. Public influence. Each time, Harry chose restraint. And restraint, history suggests, is one of the rarest qualities any leader can possess. His friendships became another major focus of historical study. At first glance, this might seem unusual. Why would scholars devote serious attention to friendships? Because those friendships changed the world. Harry, Ron, and Hermione represented something larger than themselves. They represented cooperation across differences, different personalities, different strengths, different weaknesses. Together, they accomplished what none could achieve alone. Educational programs frequently highlighted this lesson. Students examined how complementary talents created success, how trust created resilience, how loyalty created strength. The message resonated across generations, especially in a world increasingly aware of the importance of collaboration. Meanwhile, the symbolic significance of Hogwarts continued growing. The castle became more than a school, more than a historical site, more than a tourist destination. It became a reminder that institutions can fail, but they can also recover. A reminder that courage often emerges from unexpected places. A reminder that young people possess the ability to shape history. Every September, students crossed the lake or arrived by carriage, most barely considered the deeper meaning. That was the point. Normality itself became part of the legacy. The ability to attend school without fear, the ability to dream about careers instead of survival, the ability to argue about Quidditch rather than war. These ordinary freedoms represented extraordinary achievements. As decades passed, public memory evolved. Early generations remembered Voldemort vividly. Later generations knew him primarily through textbooks. Eventually, the emotional intensity faded. The events became history. This transition worried some people initially. Would society forget the lessons? Would future generations become complacent? The evidence suggested otherwise, because the lessons remained embedded within institutions, within culture, within education, within family stories. Memory changed form. It did not disappear. One of the most frequently quoted observations from this era came from a historian writing nearly 50 years after the war. When asked to summarize Harry Potter's significance, she offered a surprisingly simple answer. He helped create a world where children no longer needed heroes. The statement sparked considerable discussion, yet the more people considered it, the more profound it seemed. A society dependent on heroes is often a society in crisis. A healthy society depends on citizens. Teachers, parents, public servants, neighbors, ordinary people doing their jobs well. That was the world Harry's generation ultimately built. Not a world free from problems. Such places do not exist. A world capable of solving problems without requiring saviors. That achievement may have been their greatest success. The proof appeared everywhere. In Hogwarts classrooms, in ministry offices, in family homes, in Quidditch stadiums, in businesses, in communities. Life continued, not because heroes remained present, because institutions functioned, because citizens participated, because society matured. The future no longer depended upon a chosen one. It belonged to everyone. And perhaps that was the final victory over Voldemort. Not his defeat, his irrelevance. The fact that future generations no longer organized their lives around his shadow. They organized their lives around possibilities, around opportunities, around hope. The generation that survived the war grew older. Children became adults. Students became teachers. Apprentices became leaders. The cycle continued, as it always does. And with each passing year, the world Harry Potter helped create became slightly less dependent on memory and slightly more dependent on the values that memory inspired. Courage, compassion, integrity, friendship, choice. Those ideals endured. Long after battles ended, long after headlines faded, long after legends became history. Yet one final question remained. When the story of this generation is told centuries from now, what single lesson will survive? What truth will future generations remember when every eyewitness is gone? Every story ends. Even the greatest ones. Empires rise and fall. Wars begin and conclude. Heroes emerge and eventually pass into history. The story of Harry Potter is no exception. For years, people believed it was a story about magic, about destiny, about a chosen boy marked by fate, and on the surface, perhaps it was. There were wands, spells, dragons, ancient prophecies, dark lords, everything a legendary tale requires. Yet, as time passed, something became increasingly clear. The true power of the story never came from magic. It came from people. Because magic alone never saved the wizarding world. People did. People making choices. Difficult choices. Painful choices. Courageous choices. Again and again. When historians examined the era centuries later, they often found themselves drawn toward the same realization. The most important moments rarely involved powerful spells. They involved decisions. Simple decisions. A mother refusing to step aside. A teacher choosing loyalty over safety. A student standing up despite fear. A friend refusing to abandon another friend. A son choosing compassion over hatred. A society choosing healing over revenge. The story always returned to choices. That was the lesson. And perhaps it always had been. Long before the final battle. Long before Voldemort's return. Long before Harry ever arrived at Hogwarts. Albus Dumbledore understood it. He understood that people are not defined by ability. Not by talent. Not by blood. Not by destiny. They are defined by what they choose to become. The entire history of the wizarding world seemed to confirm that truth. Tom Riddle possessed extraordinary gifts, extraordinary intelligence, extraordinary magical power. Yet his choices transformed him into Voldemort. Harry Potter possessed no greater magical ability than many of his peers. What separated him was not power. It was choice. Again and again he chose differently. When offered revenge, he chose mercy. When offered power, he chose restraint. When offered safety, he chose sacrifice. Those choices shaped history, not because he was destined to make them, because he decided to make them. That distinction matters, more than most people realize, because destiny is comforting. Destiny removes responsibility. Choice creates responsibility. And responsibility is where courage truly lives. The war generation understood this better than anyone. They knew courage was not the absence of fear. They experienced fear constantly. Fear before battles. Fear during battles. Fear after battles. The difference was action. Courage meant moving forward anyway. Neville Longbottom demonstrated that truth. So did Ginny Weasley. So did Luna Lovegood. So did countless others whose names never appeared in famous books. Their courage looked ordinary in the moment. Most real courage does. History often imagines bravery as something dramatic. A final stand. A legendary duel. Heroic sacrifice. Sometimes bravery looks like that. More often, it looks like persistence. Showing up. Continuing. Refusing to quit. Choosing hope despite evidence to the contrary. The people who rebuilt the wizarding world practiced that form of courage every day. Another lesson emerged from the story. A lesson about love. Not romantic love alone, though that mattered. Not family love alone, though that mattered too. Something broader. Something deeper. The kind of love that places another person's well-being above your own interests. Again and again, love altered history. Lily Potter's love protected her son. Molly Weasley's love protected her family. Remus and Tonks fought for the future their child deserved. Arthur and Molly opened their home to anyone who needed it. Harry repeatedly risked everything for people he cared about. The pattern appeared everywhere. Love was not weakness. Love was strength. Perhaps the greatest strength. Voldemort never understood that. His entire worldview rejected it. He viewed love as vulnerability, a flaw, a distraction. And because he misunderstood it, he underestimated it. Again and again. Until that misunderstanding destroyed him. The irony is impossible to ignore. The most powerful dark wizard in modern history was defeated partly because he failed to understand one of the most fundamental human experiences. Power alone proved insufficient. It always does. The post-war years reinforced another truth. Healing matters. Winning matters. But healing matters too. The generation that defeated Voldemort could have devoted itself entirely to celebration. Instead, it devoted itself to reconstruction. They rebuilt schools, governments, communities, families, trust. They understood something many societies forget. Victory is not the end of responsibility. Often, it is the beginning. The difficult work comes afterward, the patient work, the unglamorous work, the work that rarely receives applause. Yet that work determines whether victory lasts. The wizarding world succeeded because people embraced that responsibility. Not perfectly, not without mistakes, but sincerely. Future generations benefited from those efforts. Children grew up without fear. Students attended Hogwarts without expecting war. Families planned futures without worrying about survival. Ordinary life became ordinary again. That term represented the true reward. Not glory, not fame, normality, peace, opportunity. As the years passed, the heroes of the war gradually became elders, then legends, then historical figures. Eventually, every eyewitness disappeared. The generation that fought the war passed into memory, then into history, then into stories. That transition happens to everyone. It is the fate of every generation. Yet some lessons survive. Some lessons outlive the people who teach them. The Harry Potter era left many such lessons behind. Future students continued studying them. Future families continued discussing them. Future leaders continued applying them. Because the story remained relevant, not due to magic, due to humanity. Every generation faces its own version of darkness, its own fears, its own challenges. The details change, the principles do not. Every generation must decide what it values, what it will tolerate, what it will defend, what it will become. The wizarding world learned those lessons through hardship. Future generations inherited the wisdom without inheriting the suffering. That is perhaps the greatest gift one generation can leave another. A better starting point, a stronger foundation, a safer future. When visitors eventually walked through Hogwarts centuries later, they still encountered reminders of the past. Memorials, portraits, stories, names. But the most important legacy was not carved into stone. It was not preserved in museums. It was not hidden inside ancient magical artifacts. It lived inside people, inside values, inside choices. Every time someone chose kindness over cruelty, every time someone chose understanding over prejudice, every time someone chose courage over fear, the legacy continued, quietly, persistently, generation after generation. And so the story ends where it truly began. Not with magic, not with prophecy, not with destiny, with a choice. A simple choice repeated throughout countless lives. The choice to do what is right when doing what is easy would be far more comfortable. That choice saved the wizarding world. That choice rebuilt it. And that choice remains available to every generation that follows. The castle still stands. The train still runs. Students still arrive each September carrying hopes and uncertainties. The future still unfolds. And somewhere in every new generation, someone faces a difficult decision. When that moment arrives, the enduring lesson of Harry Potter remains waiting. Not as a command, not as a prophecy, as a reminder. That courage matters, that love matters, that friendship matters, that sacrifice matters. And above all, that the choices we make ultimately become